Parents, were they worried about you?
Nobody's worried about me.
Okay.
Not least of all my parents. It's my job. I have
Now
chosen.
things, of course, things have changed
No, even
now.
then, that time, nobody bothered about my safety or security because it is a professional hazard, and I have chosen this service. It's not that somebody imposed it upon me. My wife is the daughter of an IPS officer. She also knew very well that there'll be a lot of pitfalls in the police service. With bouquets, will be a lot of brickbats also. It's a job which demands a lot of physical exertion, mental stress, as well as threat to you and your family. But then, this is what I've signed up for.
As a police officer, you tried to put an end, you tried your best to put an end to the kidnapping industry that thrived in Bihar when you joined as an IPS officer back in 1998. You write about this, of course, in your books, in both the works. Uh, in fact, you have given the example of even a rickshaw puller, that the moment his neighbors got to know that he had sold a piece of plot in 1 lakh rupees, he was kidnapped. So such was the case. So would you like to share any particular case that you solved and that gave you immense amount of satisfaction? Any kidnapping case?
There have been so many cases, Lalit, and whenever you recover a child who has been kidnapped and you see that he runs to his mother's arms or his parents, meets his parents, and when the mother looks at you and just blesses you, you cannot, describe the feeling you get as a human being, as a police officer. So there have been so many instances like that. Some have been very thrilling, in which it was touch and go. In my line of work, there's a very thin line between failure and success. It's basically life and death. One small mistake can cost somebody's life. So I was very lucky that whenever there was a kidnapping, and it was quite common during those days, I got almost 100% recovery. So that way I feel very happy, very thankful that I could help unite children with their families. And of course, there were other people also, elderly people also kidnapped, doctors also. And sometimes it happened that we went looking for somebody else and got somebody else. Kidnapping was so common that I remember there was an engineer who was kidnapped from Patna, and we got a tip off that, sir, that somebody has been kidnapped and is being kept in this village. We went in the dark of the night, and when we, recovered that gentleman, he started speaking in fluent, accented English, and we asked him, "Who are you?" He said, "I'm a doctor who has just come from England, and I was kidnapped in Nalanda district." So it was totally, we were all taken aback that who is this person, and it became a major news that we were not even aware that this person has been kidnapped. So these kind of things happened that time, but I'm very thankful to my entire team that all of them worked very hard, and it was a combined team effort. And of course, in movies and otherwise, people show that one person is responsible, but yes, you have to lead from the front, but it's your team which works with you.
Thank you. Once, as I have read in your book, you almost had a brush with death when you led an operation against Naxals. So, of course, you played a key role in leading a movement against Naxalism. Of course, you did it. I mean, would you like to share your experience? What had happened exactly?
I was SP of a district called Begusarai, and the Begusarai was not exactly known for being Naxal prone, but it was used as a transit place by the Naxalites. So when I was the SP there, I knew that Naxalites use it to rest for some time and to move into neighboring districts. So I put all their phones on parallel listening. Now it's very common, everybody can overhear the conversations, but it was very unique during those days. So I heard that the Naxalites were camping in some area, and I sent my DSP with the team and asked them to surround the Naxalites. But somehow the DSP got caught in the crossfire, and the Naxalites had injured a few of the policemen. And I reached the place later on with my team. And during those times, and it is, very commonsensical in any operation that you must deboard your vehicles, alight from the vehicle a little far off from the place where the firing is going on, and then you have to crawl and go to those places. And there were no roads in Bihar during those days, 2007, 2008, particularly for villages. So while I was talking to my police officers, my police team, the driver kept on driving, and we reached the place, where the firing was taking place. Right in front of me, I saw the DSP was lying in a pit, and he asked me to get down from the gypsy immediately. That, sir, what are you doing? Ab kood diye gypsy se. So I didn't understand what is he saying, and before I could get down, my bodyguards had already got down. They got shot, and I realized that we were just around 50 meters away from the hideouts of the Naxalites. So we had a long encounter with the Naxalites. We arrested all of them, but later on I realized I chided my driver that why do you drive straight away to the place of firing, the scene of crime. He said, sir, मुझे पता नहीं था कि रोड बन गई है यहाँ तक. मैं तो सोचा था कि रोड कहीं ना कहीं रुक जाएगी तो I'll stop the vehicle there and then he will get down and walk to the place. But the local MLA had used his funds judiciously and he had made a road, which was dangerous for us, but good for the villagers otherwise. So, uske baad when we arrested all those Naxalites, still I made a cardinal mistake. I have no qualms in admitting, despite being a trained police officer, I felt quite relaxed after I had arrested them and I sat on a haystack inside one of the houses. So my guards, one of them was very well trained. He was trained by the NSG. He put on a bayonet on his AK-47 and started poking on all the haystacks. Lalit, you'll not believe, he poked the haystack on which I was sitting, and there were two Naxalites hiding inside that haystack. So it was really foolish of me to have thought that the operation is over. And they were fully armed. If they had detonated an explosive, thrown a grenade at us, it would have been catastrophic. So I was very lucky, though I got the President's Medal for Gallantry for this act, but there was some, bit of bravado as well as foolishness by me in this operation.
All these experiences, of course, contributed to your stint as an author, and your work, Bihar Diaries, became an instant success. It made a splash in literary world, and there is hardly anyone in India who is not familiar with that work and who hasn't seen its rendition on Netflix. So initially, I read some news reports that Neeraj Pandey was about to make a film on your book. Akshay Kumar was going to star there. So what is the background story? How did Netflix approach you? What happened exactly?
It's nothing, some things are destined to happen. So Akshay is a very good friend of mine, and I just talked to him about my experiences in Bihar. He introduced me to Neeraj Pandey, and then just things went on from that. Nothing was planned as such. So there's a long story to that, but certain things are destined to happen, just happened. That's it. It was not planned as a web series, particularly using my name. Nothing like that was planned. And Neeraj did think about Akshay, but then he thought about some other people, Siddharth Malhotra, some other younger actors also. A lot of things happened. But some things, they happen, I don't know, there's no reason, nothing like that. Kuch aisa hai nahi.
Put it succinctly. Thank you. Uh, there's another thing, of course, about which you have written in great detail. But if you'd like to share one or two episodes from those writings about the ways in which you ended up capturing the Gabbar Singh of Shekhpura. You have written about that experience, but I'm sure later on you got to apprehend many such Gabbar Singhs about whom you are yet to write. Maybe you'll write about them later. Would you like to talk about another Gabbar Singh who you caught later?
Already my writings have landed me in so much of trouble. But I will certainly, because I feel very privileged, very humble that my writings have inspired so many people, particularly the youngsters, to join the civil services,
That's true.
and they've helped change the perspective a normal Indian has about the Indian police. So I feel very, very privileged that my books are actually making a difference. People, UPSC aspirants in particular, are reading these books. So maybe I'll write about those memoirs, those experiences later on. But there have been so many such instances. Being a police officer as a young SP who has worked in 7 or 8 districts of Bihar, you will have such experiences every day. So, first few days, the first 10 days of my career as an ASP in Bihar and Munger, I've written about that also in my books. So I arrested two of the biggest criminals of Munger called Haro Yadav and Kishore Yadav. आप लोगों को obviously नहीं पता होगा but मुंगेर में उस ज़माने में जो लोग थे, because I arrested both of them, there was of course a lot of luck involved in that. I will never deny that. but I arrested them quite easily. So everybody was taken aback, and I didn't realize who I have arrested because they were had been, the police had been trying to arrest those criminals for a long time, and nobody had been successful. And within 10 days of my joining as a rookie cop, I arrested two of the biggest criminals of that area. So lot of times you put in your efforts, but luck also plays a big role in that.
Of course, your writings, as well as the writing of Manoj Sharma ji in recent times, I refer to his name because the story of the two of you has inspired numerous young men and women to sit UPSC exam and become police officers. So I'm glad that you decided to uh, transform your experiences into writing, give it a shape in writing, and that turned out to be really inspiring. One question that occurred to me actually while watching the series on Netflix is that how authentic is the representation of Amit Lodha in that series? How authentic is the portrayal of Amit Lodha as an officer, or too much poetic license has been taken as any director would take?
So I was never consulted before the series while the film series was being made. But yes, Neeraj is a friend of mine. He knew my personality very well. And I would say Karan has played my role to perfection almost, and it's quite authentic. Only thing is, he's far more good looking and all that. Otherwise, yes, he has portrayed the role of an urban person, urbane person coming to Bihar and assimilating in the local culture, slowly learning the tricks of the trade and learning about the culture of the state, so many other things. So it's almost authentic, almost I would say.
So you started as a career as an author of non-fiction after you joined the service, of course, and then now you have moved to fiction. In 2025, you ended up writing Police Officers Beyond the Call of Duty. So why do we see this kind of shift from non-fiction to fiction? Is it, if I do not sound controversial, is it because you did not want to, or you felt that you would be displeasing your superiors or the government? And
No, I
fiction,
never thought about all that. Otherwise, nobody in my place would have written another book. You
and the
require a lot of courage to do these
and
kind
the
of things.
reason why I asked this question is, I was reminded of Premchand, the famous author. When he served as an inspector of his schools, his name was Dhanpat Rai, and he ended up bringing out a collection of short stories called Soze Batan. And his superiors were so upset, they warned him that you cannot write while being in government service. So he changed his name to Premchand. Initially, he was Dhanpat Rai. This is how Dhanpat Rai became Premchand. And he kept on writing. So I just wondered whether you had such experiences too.
Really, I was not aware of this anecdote. Wonderful, thanks for enlightening me also. It's nothing I never intended to be an author, a writer. I have no passion for writing, let me be very honest. It will be a little surprising to so many young readers out here. I always had a flair for writing, that is one thing, and having interest in writing is another thing. The same thing, I was good in physics and maths, but had no interest in engineering, which I keep telling people everywhere. So sometimes, certain talents you're born with, you can't help it. So in my school, I was editor of my school magazine. Then in IIT also, I wrote certain articles when I was forced to, that you please write these articles. We need to publish the IIT magazine, this and that. And then when I was in IIT, I thought that I will write my memoirs as an IIT student because IIT had a lot of interesting anecdotes, fun, humor, uh, depression, so many things happened in IIT. I'm writing those memoirs now for information. But that time I thought I'll write, and I just left it to that. And later on, my batchmate and now a dear friend Chetan Bhagat, he wrote his book 5 Point Someone. So I felt very disappointed with Chetan's success and very jealous of him that, Chetan has written the same story which I would have written. I keep telling Chetan about it that, मैं पहले लिख देता तो आज मैं भी उतना ही famous हो जाता, whatever. So I never thought of writing a book, but then, as I said, I met Akshay, so many things happened, and then a few other people, they encouraged me that you have to write, and I did not know how to approach a publisher. I said, I'm not going to do any of those things. But Penguin approached me then. Somebody told them, Imran Hashmi rather. Imran Hashmi told Penguin that I am a good writer and they must approach me. And then I wrote this book, Bihar Diaries. I never imagined that this book would become so popular and people love it so much because I just thought that I will just tick off one of the boxes of my, bucket list. That's it. So I never knew that Bihar Diaries would lead to the writing of another book because nothing succeeds like success. Then the publishers asked me to write another book, that you write another book, people want to read your stories. And the third one, I had no intention at all, Police Affairs, nothing to do with fiction or non-fiction. But, it's called serendipity. A friend of mine, Ashima, she called me that, I'm telling you that you must keep writing books. You'll be very well known for your books and all that. I told her, Ashima, that I'm a police officer. I have no interest in writing books, and it requires a lot of effort. So I don't want to write any more books. She said, no, you will write more books. Aap dekh lena. And the very next morning, while I was sleeping, I had this idea because something had happened. The Antela case in Bombay, so many other things. So I just spun a yarn in my mind that time that this can be an interesting story idea. And whenever I was free in my office time, 15 minutes between two files or something, between a meeting, I would keep writing. So it turned out to be an interesting story, and then I took inspiration from so many real life experiences of my own as well as people around me. So I think police affairs for all those people who like reading about police, because it's fiction, but it's as good as real. When you read it, you will realize that the inspiration has been taken from so many things from all around us. The difference is that I took a big risk this time. It's not about writing fiction, non-fiction. My first two books were about an ideal police officer. What the I just wrote the real story, but the public put that ideal police officer, maybe myself, on a pedestal and took a lot of inspiration from that character. But this IPS officer, he's apparently ideal, but he's a man of gray shades, like any other human being. So he has fallen to a few temptations, he has committed a few mistakes, and he's in the system, and he wants to use the very system he's working with to get out of some problems, some conundrums he's landed himself in. So it's a very interesting story. If you read it, I've already got lovely reviews for the book, though I've not publicized it at all. But I think it's very interesting. Mr. Shashi Tharoor recently read it, and he especially came to my house. And I had a lot of trepidation. I told Mr. Tharoor not to read this book because I said that, sir, it's a fictional account. You rather read the two true true accounts, Bihar Diaries and Life in the Uniform. He was adamant that I want to read this fictional story about an IPS officer, and he called me from Delhi. He said it's lovely. It's very, very interesting.
So I'd also recommend the audience to grab a copy of the book Police Affairs and try reading it. I'm sure you'll have a good time. Uh, Sir, in fact, as you mentioned that you created a character here who has some flaws, and that reminds me of an ideal protagonist. In fact, an ideal protagonist, if you look at literary convention, is the one who should have some flaws, so that the audience will be able to empathize, the readers will be able to empathize. Since I am a student of literature, I teach Aristotle, and in his work Poetics, he talks about an ideal protagonist, what kind of protagonist an author should create. And he says that the protagonist should be neither thoroughly evil nor thoroughly good. Because if he is thoroughly evil, a reader would like him to suffer. If he is thoroughly good, we won't be able to empathize with him. So in fact, you have created an ideal protagonist, and the reader will be able to empathize with him even more. And the last thing before I take questions, we take questions. I'm sure the audience will have many questions for you. The last thing that I would like to ask you is about your future books. Are you planning to write a memoir, as you said, as you hinted at?
Yeah. First, I'm writing my experiences as an IT student, and I'm remembering all my past experiences, my lovely days at the IIT hostels, my failed attempts, you know, in academics as well as making girlfriends, everything. So it's going to be very funny, you know, because IIT was also a roller coaster ride for me and so many other batchmates. That is one thing. Then I've seen that people read so many self-help books right now, and I fail to understand that what is special about self-help books and what is there that we do not already know of. As human beings, we all know that this is right, this is wrong. We should wake up early. We should not scroll mobile phones endlessly. But still, people keep reading all these books. But I'll just write my own experiences as a human being, and I'm very sure that will resonate with all the readers because it's going to be a real story. And I just thought, I'm 51 right now, 50 odd years in this world. So many experiences, good, bad, ugly, beautiful. So I think everybody lives a life, goes through his own journey, but we can all learn life lessons from each other. So I'll just write my experiences, my memoirs, and I'm sure it will be very interesting read for so many people.
You know, sir, this is the ideal time for you to come out with an autobiography.
I still got almost 9 years of service, so I can't
And
write so many things.
the reason why I said this is कि हिंदी साहित्य में माना जाता है कि पहली जो ऑटोबायोग्राफी आई थी वो आई थी बनारसी लाल दास के द्वारा. He was a Jain monk and he wrote it at the age of 55 because Jains believed a human being's life expectancy is 115 years, 110 years. So by that standard, he had already lived half of his life and he calls it Ardh Kathanak. So 55, I feel, is the right time to bring out
नहीं
a memoir.
55 अभी नहीं हुआ हूँ 51 हुआ अभी
51, so you have 4 more years actually. तो अब हम कुछ क्वेश्चंस ले सकते हैं. थैंक यू फॉर शेयरिंग योर इंस्पायरिंग स्टोरी बिकॉज इफ अ स्टूडेंट a shy teenager from IIT can crack civil services and go on to become a decorated, one of the most decorated police officers of India, as well as an acclaimed author, you too can achieve this aim. You too can do this. It's an inspiring tale. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Now we can take some questions quickly from the audience.
It was a lovely session, sir, first of all. And my question to you is, when you put so much of your life into the works that you've produced, and of course, then they go on to also be recreated by a different auteur, like the director as well. So, and those works are up for public scrutiny. When so a lot of your life is also up for public scrutiny, and then there are people around you who may be mere characters in the book, but they're very real people. So how do you negotiate your relationships with them when so much of that is under the public eye?
I actually never thought much about, what kind of relations I will have with the people I'm writing about because I changed all the names. I've made fictional names. None of the names are real except for the people, the police officers who helped me because they deserved a mention in the book. And never thought about any of these consequences. Just wrote it, कुछ सोचा नहीं. Sometimes things happen, and still, the antagonist of my book, Bihar Diaries, and the web series also, he's out on bail right now. He's come out. If you see YouTube channels, he's been threatening me. So many things are happening. But I really don't care about all these things. This is, as I said earlier, also a profession that I've chosen. I'm not trying to show that, look how brave I am. Nothing like that. It's something that I've chosen and enjoy this. That's it. And my relations with my superiors, I really don't know. But yes, the public, the people, they have loved me so much. So that gives me a lot of strength, a lot of courage to fight my battles every day.
Thank you. Let's take another question. Okay, please.
Good morning, sir. Sir, though every experience would have been an unique one for you, but a person always has that one life-changing moment. So, what was that experience? You may share. Thank you.
Mm, I just remember one incident which I keep quoting in all my interviews. When I was in IT, I'd gone through a terrible time. I've told so many people already about it. And when I was preparing for the UPSC, I was very low on confidence. I was in Jaipur. So my friend Yashish Daya, who is the CEO and founder of policybazaar.com, he was my senior in IIT. He had come to Jaipur. So he said, Amit, कैसा चल रहा है? मैंने कहा, याशीष, जिंदगी में जो चाहते हैं वो कहाँ मिलता है? तो he said, अरे जिंदगी में जो चाहते हैं वही तो मिलता है. So he just said that and he left. अभी भी मैं उसको ये बोलता हूँ कई बार. बोलता है मैंने ऐसा कौन सी बड़ी बात बोल दी. But that was a moment of epiphany for me. I just thought about it for some time and I said that Yashish is right. जिंदगी में जो चाहते हैं वही तो मिलता है. So then I started, preparing for the civil service in the right earnest. मैं actually चाहने लगा कि I want to become an IPS officer. So that was one of those moments which kind of gave me a lot of, you can say, I don't know, life changing, but yes, it has changed my life.
Good morning, sir. Sir, my question is, while being on duty, you experience extreme human behavior, right? So does writing about it help you make sense of that?
No, I didn't. I'm a sensitive person, but while writing, there was nothing, no emotion, nothing. I just wrote the facts. Only thing is I made it a very interesting read. उसमें humor भी डाला, emotions डाले. मैंने कुछ नहीं सोचा. वो natural flair है जो आप बोल रहे हो कि writing में आपने human story सोची. अब आप बोल रहे हो तो मुझे लग रहा है. But उस वक्त I just wrote the incidents as they were. Exactly the way they were. Whatever happened, the emotions also I've written exactly as they were. But while writing, I myself did not feel any emotions. I'll be honest with
Thank you so much, sir.
Yet, as I felt, writing is peppered with robust humor
you. हाँ.
throughout.
I got a good sense of humor, particularly self-deprecatory. Yes, I have.
It gets reflected in your write-up, of
हाँ,
course.
I take my work seriously. I don't take myself seriously.
That's the way to survive.
There's a lady there.
Hello, good morning, sir. It's very lovely to hear you. So, my question is, how has life in Khaki shaped the way you write your novels and the
How
stories
is
you
life in Khaki?
shaped the way you write?
See, being a serving police officer, I'm supposed to help people listen to their problems and try to do my best to take away the suffering from them, even for a moment. So I just wrote my real experiences, and I'm a very sensitive person, sensitive to people's problems. Even today, though I'm very senior, I'm not in the field directly. So even today, whenever people come to me, and as I said earlier, I feel very privileged, very lucky. People from all over the country send me WhatsApp messages, including their problems, and they expect me to help them. So I number of times I tell them that I am not posted in your state. I am in Bihar. I'm not in Punjab or Maharashtra. But still, they expect me to help them in some way or the other. I keep getting mails, SMSs, WhatsApp. You can see them, Instagram for that matter. So I do my best, and the interesting part is, I don't know about the book as such, but because of the success of the book and the series, whenever I called any police officer in the country, initially they might not recognize me, but after it recently happened, Shrikant Bola apne naam suna hoga, on whom also a movie was made. Wonderful person, though he's blind, but a brilliant guy. He called me for something and he said that he is being harassed by the local police in Karnataka. So I said that I will look into it. I'll try to do whatever I can, but I don't have any jurisdiction in Karnataka. I'm in Bihar. So I called the SP, he just listened to me and he said, okay, I'll look into it. After 5 minutes, he again called me back. That, sir, are you the same person who's written Bihar Diaries, Life in Uniform, and the series and all? I'm like, yes, yes, I am. And then he did his job. So I felt, it was so funny. मैंने कहा तुम वैसे भी कर देते यार किताब लिख दी मैंने तो but these are the kind of experiences I'm having after writing the book.
Thank you, sir.
Truth be told, writing and policing, to some extent, I mean, for someone like me, is writing and policing are the two sides of the same coin. Because in order to be a good police officer, you need to have empathy. And a good writer also needs to have empathy. Until you know how to empathize with the suffering of others, you cannot be a good police officer, neither can you be a good author. I hope you agree with me, sir.
Absolutely, absolutely. You need to be a good human being to be a good police officer. You can be a successful police officer, but not necessarily good police officer.
Similarly, a good writer has to empathize with the sufferings of people. Next question.
So, a very basic question I would like to ask you. Like, we do know that when we are talking about Bihar Diaries, obviously it calls for urgency. But still, sir, what was the thought process behind that? Like, choosing that particular title, Bihar Diaries, like, why?
Bihar is my Karam Bhumi. I've worked in Bihar for almost 20 years now. And diaries means I just wrote about my experiences working as a young SP in Bihar during those days. That's why Bihar Diaries. But I didn't know that the name would be so catchy and people love it, Bihar Diaries.
Yeah, actually, it is getting famous. Thank you so much, sir.
There is one question that I would like to ask you before we wind up the session. And I read your interview in the Indian Express once, where you say that how initially you became, of course, immensely successful at the age of 25. You became an SP, and later you had a humbling experience. You had a chastening experience. So life taught you some lessons in humility. What had happened exactly?
Nothing, I was always humble. I'd become a little cocky, initially when you get to man big districts, Nalanda, Muzaffarpur, right at the beginning of your career. Then you start taking everything for granted that, ये सब तो मैं कर ही लूंगा. And then suddenly I was shunted for no reason. Suddenly, from being the SP of a very important district and suddenly you're relegated to a non-district post. Then you realize that life can be a great balancer, great leveler, and things, you always fall when you're at the top because there's nowhere else to go. So 4 years back also I was at the top of my life, the best phase of my life, and then suddenly I had a nasty fall, which all of you are aware of. So things happen when you feel that everything is perfect, when you become a little cocky. I think it's a way of nature, way of Almighty to tell you that you're still a human being, a mere mortal. So that's it, nothing else.
Thank you so much once again, Amit Lodhaji, for sharing the riveting tale of your life and your writings. I'm sure it benefited our audience immensely. Let's give him a big round of applause for his riveting
Questions,
tale.
more questions. Let them ask a few questions.
Do
I'm
we have
here.
some more question?
one last
No,
question.
I'm quite happy answering your questions.
Sorry,
Okay,
sir.
then
One
let's
last
continue
question,
for a
one last
while.
question, one last question.
Please continue. I'll be
Uh,
happy unless the next author is waiting.
नहीं
I
नहीं
don't know next.
आ गए हैं लेकिन एक क्वेश्चन सर.
पूछो.
सर आप एक सफल प्रशासक रहे हैं आईपीएस के तौर पे. हमने देखा है, जितना हमने सीरीज पे देखा है आपको, आपकी किताब बिहार डायरीज या सीरीज में जो दिखाया गया है, एक छोटा सा सवाल है सर कि प्रशासक के तौर पे आपका जो कार्य रहा है और एक बतौर एक लेखक, दोनों में से मुश्किल आपको क्या लगा सर, जब आप किताब लिखे और जब आप एज ए प्रशासक जब आप इस चीज को देखते हैं, इस बारे में थोड़ा बताइए सर.
मेरे को दोनों ही चीज़ें मुश्किल नहीं लगी क्योंकि दोनों चीज़ों को मैंने पूरी सच्चाई से और जो सच था काम में भी बिल्कुल जो सच्चाई के साथ काम किया, ईमानदारी से काम किया. मेरा मतलब ईमानदारी का केवल ये नहीं होता है कि आपने पैसे के मामले में ईमानदारी दिखाई. काम के प्रति ईमानदारी थी कि कोई गरीब आदमी भी आपके पास आता है, आपको उसको उतनी ही तवज्जो देते हैं जितने आप एक किसी धनाढ़ आदमी को या प्रभावशाली आदमी को देते हैं. तो काम के प्रति पूरी ईमानदारी थी, चाहे कोई भी आदमी आए. और किताब लिखते हुए भी पूरी ईमानदारी कि उसमें एक भी चीज़ झूठ नहीं है. कम ही लिख के लिखी है, मतलब उसमें ऐसा नहीं कि मैंने ये कर दिया है, मैंने वो कर दिया है, मेरे से पहले ऐसा कुछ नहीं था. आप अगर आप किताब पढ़ेंगे, अपनी गलतियों के बारे में भी लिखा है, अपनी टीम के बारे में पूरा लिखा है कि मेरी टीम ने ऐसा किया वैसा किया. तो दोनों ही चीज़ों पूरी सच्चाई है, लेकिन
बहुत
सच्चाई को कीमत भी चुकानी पड़ती है.
जी सर, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद.
लेकिन
सर.
अंत में सत्य जीतता भी है.
जी सर, हम देखे हैं सर. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर.
थैंक यू. उनको पूछना है कुछ.
So basically, all your life you've had encounters or you have countered activities, extreme activities with Naxalites and all. So going through all these psychologically tasking challenges, has it brought any changes in your perspective towards life, society, or humans?
I don't know if you'll believe me or not. I've never thought about all these things. Encounters, crime. मुझसे कई लोग पूछ चुके हैं, how did you feel when you saw a dead body for the first time, when you had a shootout with criminals? कुछ सोचा नहीं कभी. मेरी एक ये प्रॉब्लम है, सोचता कुछ भी नहीं हूँ. I just live in the moment. I just flow with, time. ज़्यादा कुछ सोचता नहीं हूँ. That's a problem with me. Analyze, भी आप बोल रहे हो तो थोड़ा बहुत, a lot of times people ask me, have you reformed any criminal? I just tell them that I did my job. जो मेरा काम था as a police officer. और कुछ लोग रिफॉर्म हुए हैं, कुछ लोग नहीं हुए हैं. बट आई कैन नॉट क्लेम दैट आई एम गांधी जी और मेरी बातें से कोई रिफॉर्म हो जाएगा. बट कभी कुछ सोचा नहीं, बिल्कुल नहीं सोचता कोई कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस कि क्या होगा क्या नहीं होगा. दिस इज द वे आई एम.
That's good.
एंड नो साइकोलॉजिकल इम्पैक्ट ऑन मी. आप देख ही रहे हो, बिल्कुल नॉर्मल.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
बट ह्यूमर हैज केप्ट मी हैप्पी. ऑलवेज हैव अ लॉट ऑफ ह्यूमर, इवन इन द वर्स्ट फेजेस ऑफ माई लाइफ. I think he needs to ask me. He wants to ask something to the gentleman.
मॉर्निंग सर. सर माय क्वेश्चन जैसे है कि आप अभी बोले मैं सोचता नहीं कुछ करने से, लेकिन आज के जनरेशन में लोग बहुत ओवर थिंक करते हैं, स्पेशली यूथ. तो कैसे वो माइंडसेट हम बिल्ड करें कि ओवरथिंक ना करें। यहाँ पे हम एक चीज को लेके बैठ जाते हैं पास्ट को, और उस चीज के आगे बढ़ने के लिए आप कुछ अगर कुछ बोल पाए तो।
एक तो मैं तो अपने आप को अभी आज के जनरेशन के समझता हूँ। मैं नहीं समझता कि मैं पुराने जनरेशन को, मैं जेनजी की सारी लिंगो वगैरह सब मुझे पता है सारा कुछ। सो बट ओवर थिंकिंग ऐसा नहीं कि मेरे टाइम में लोग नहीं सोचते थे, ये सब स्टेट ऑफ माइंड है। एंड माइंड इज अ रिमार्केबल थिंग, वी डू नॉट appreciate or understand the limitlessness of the mind. As I said earlier, in IIT I was totally indisciplined, 4 बजे सोने जा रहा हूँ सुबह, कोई लाइफ का एम नहीं, कोई पर्पस नहीं, खुद के बारे में कॉम्प्लेक्सेस, दो जनों के सामने बोल नहीं सकता था। आज मेरे को अगर पब्लिक नहीं नजर आती तो आई गेट लिटिल फिजटी कि अरे लोग क्यों नहीं है, आई वांट अ बिग क्राउड। तो व्हाट डज दिस शो? दैट इट्स ऑल इन योर माइंड। जैसे उन्होंने बोला इनकाउंटर्स के बाद आपको कैसा लगता है, तो कोई फीलिंग नहीं है। तो ओवर थिंकिंग या जो भी आपके हाथ में है, किताबें पढ़ने से नहीं होगा। द डे यू डिसाइड कि मुझे ऐसा करना है, मुझे अपनी लाइफ को इस डायरेक्शन में ले जाना है। और अल्टीमेटली वन थिंग इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, आई थिंक ऑल ऑफ अस नो, हर सेल्फ हेल्प बुक में भी लिखा है, वैसे भी सबको पता है, एक्सेप्टेंस। यू कैन ओनली डू योर कर्मा वॉट यू कैन डू, मतलब बाकी चीज़ जो होनी होगी वो होगी। सो एक्सेप्टेंस इज अ मस्ट। थिंकिंग करने से अगर वो चीज़ चेंज हो जाए तो फिर बात ही क्या है। प्रॉब्लम्स मेरी लाइफ में भी खूब सारी है, आपको ही पता है, सबकी लाइफ में कुछ ना कुछ प्रॉब्लम्स होती हैं। लेकिन मैं उनके ना सोचता नहीं, आई जस्ट टेक देम एज अ पार्ट ऑफ माई लाइफ। जैसे ब्रेकफास्ट किया, लंच किया, तो उस प्रॉब्लम को भी सॉल्व करना है, तो दैट्स अ पार्ट ऑफ माई लाइफ। अनलेस कोई ऐसा डिजीज ही आपको हो जाए लाइफ थ्रेटनिंग तो बात अलग, अदरवाइज तो लाइफ में कुछ ना कुछ रोज ही होता रहता है सबके साथ। तो क्या सोच के होगा।
थैंक यू सर।
We would have loved to go on and have this conversation, but time doesn't permit us as we have another session now. So thank you so much once again. I
माय
wish
प्लेजर।
I, I wish the land of Bihar gets more and more officers like you in future. Thank you so much.
माय प्लेजर, थैंक यू सो मच।
सर्वप्रथम हम अपने वक्ताओं के हृदय से आभार व्यक्त करते हैं, जिन्होंने अपने विचारों और अनुभवों से इस सत्र का अत्यंत समृद्ध बनाया। अब हम आदरपूर्वक आमंत्रित करना चाहेंगे एक प्रतिष्ठित लेखिका माननीय वैशाली हमलई को, ताकि वे हमारे वक्ताओं का सम्मान अभिनंदन करें।
हेलो हेलो। मैं सारे अतिथियों से अनुरोध करूंगा कि कृपया वो स्थान पे सत्र के लिए बने रहे, अगले सत्र के लिए बने रहे, क्योंकि जल्द ही हमारे अगले सत्र शुरू होने जा रहा है। प्लीज सब अपने अपनी जगह ले लें। सारे अतिथियां प्लीज अपने अपने जगह ले लें। अभी इसके बाद ही हमारी दूसरी सत्र शुरू होने वाली है। जितने लोग भी खड़े हैं कृपया बैठ जाएं, क्योंकि दूसरा सत्र हमारा जल्द ही शुरू होने वाला है। प्लीज फिर से एक बार सुप्रभात सभी को। आज का हमारा इस सत्र का विषय है ओडिया कथा की हिंदी यात्रा। जब कोई साहित्य या कोई बात लिखी जाती है तो वही साहित्य कई अनेक भाषाओं में यात्रा करती है। ये यात्रा अनुवादिक होती है। अनुवाद के तौर पे कई बार ये जानना जरूरी होता है कि ये बात, ये साहित्य भावानुवाद है, शब्दानुवाद है, या इसमें अनुवादक की अपनी सृजनी, अपनी अनुभव सम्मिलित है। इन विषयों पे इस चर्चा को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए आज हमारे साथ हैं आदरणीय श्री सुजाता शिवेन जी। श्री सुजाता शिवेन जी ओडिशा के एक प्रतिष्ठित अनुवादिका रही हैं। पिछले 3 दशकों में लगभग 50 से ज्यादा पुस्तकों को ओडिया से हिंदी में आप अनुवादित कर चुके हैं। बहुत बहुत स्वागत है मैम आपका। आज के इस सत्र के संचालक के तौर पे हमारे साथ हैं बहु प्रतिभा के धनी एक लेखक, कलाकार, गीतकार आदरणीय मैडम लिपिका परिड़ा जी। आप एक सामाजिक कार्यकर्ता के रूप में भी बहुत सम्मान से सम्मानित हुए हैं। अब सत्र आप दोनों जी, धन्यवाद।
Very good morning, friends. Today we are going to talk about translation, Hindi and Odia translation to be precise. हमारे बीच में है, जैसे अभी आपने सुना, हमारे बीच में है सुजाता शिवेन जी, distinguished translator and significant contributor to Hindi literature. She has bridged linguistic and cultural divides. She has translated Bipin Bihari Mishra, A.K. Mishra, Indulata Mahanti, Fani Mahanti into Hindi. And she has brought the regional Indian literature to a broader audience, enriching Hindi literary landscape into diverse narratives and perspectives. लेकिन आज की चर्चा का विषय है चारू, चिवर और चारिया, जो कि कलिंगा लिटरेरी अवार्ड जिसको मिला है, उसको इन्होंने सुजाता शिवेन जी ने ओडिया से हिंदी में किया है। और इसमें हमें देखने को मिलता है एक्सेलेंस इन लिटरेरी ट्रेडिशन। और चारू, चिवर और चारिया एक हाईली अक्लेम्ड हिस्टोरिकल नॉवल है जो कि 8th सेंचुरी उड़ीसा के भौम डायनेस्टी में बेस्ड हुआ है। और ये बात करती है राइज एंड डिक्लाइन ऑफ तांत्रिक बुद्धिज्म के बारे में, वज्रायना, सहजायना, इसके बारे में बात करती है। और ओरिजिनल नॉवल जो है, जो बिपिन बिहारी वो प्रदीप दास के लिखा है, इसको सारला पुरस्कार मिल चुका है। और इसका हिंदी अनुवाद किया है हमारे सुजाता शिवेन जी ने, और इसको उच्च सम्मान मिला है इस ट्रांसलेशन को। चलिए आज हम बात करते हैं सुजाता शिवेन जी के साथ इस चारू, चिवर और चारिया के बारे में आज हम बात करेंगे। तो सुजाता जी, आप हमें बताएं कि चारू, चिवर और चारिया का नोटेबल हिंदी लिटरेचर को कैसा कंट्रीब्यूशन रहा है।
नमस्कार। चारू, चिवर और चरिया का जब मैंने अनुवाद किया था, मैं ये कह दूं कि लेखक प्रदीप दास सर हैं और उनको यहाँ आज उपस्थित होना था, लेकिन उनकी तबीयत ठीक नहीं है, इसलिए वो यहाँ नहीं पहुँच पाए। और इसको उड़ीसा का सबसे बड़ा सम्मान सरला पुरस्कार मिल चुका है। इस किताब को जब मैंने अनुवाद किया, मुझे भी बुद्ध धर्म के बारे में बहुत कुछ ऐसी बातें पता चली जो कि मैं पहले नहीं जानती थी। और उड़िया में मैं कहूँगी कि ये सचमुच एक क्लासिक किताब है और वो डिजर्व भी करता है जो उसको सरला पुरस्कार इस किताब को मिला। और इसको साहित्य आज तक दिल्ली में हमारे प्रेसिडेंट द्रौपदी मुर्मू जी ने इसके लिए, इस किताब के लिए प्रदीप दास सर को सम्मानित किया था। और पिछले साल कलिंग लिटरेरी फेस्टिवल में इस किताब के अनुवाद के लिए मुझे भी पुरस्कृत किया गया था। तो मुझे लगता है कि
तालियां तालियां सुजाता जी के लिए तालियां।
तो ये किताब का जर्नी बहुत अच्छा रहा। उसको मुझे लगता है कि जो उसको सम्मान मिलना चाहिए था। और इस किताब को अनुवाद करने के समय में मुझे जो परेशानियां सामने में आई, मैं उसके बारे में बताना चाहती हूँ कि ये चूंकि बौद्ध धर्म भारत में और खासकर उड़ीसा में कैसे पल्लवित हुआ, और उस समय जो राजा थे और ये भौम वंश के जो राजा थे उनके ऊपर में कहानी है कि वो उसको उसको पृष्ठपोषकता किए कि उसको हमेशा बुद्ध धर्म को ज़्यादा प्रचार प्रसार करने के लिए अपने राज्य में उनको अनुमति दिया। और बाद में लेकिन बौद्ध धर्म में जो तंत्र साधना का जो प्रवेश हुआ, उसके बाद एक तरह से बहुत ज़्यादा उन लोग जो स्त्री पुरुष का संबंध को उन लोग तो हाई उसमें लेके गए उसको, क्योंकि उसके बाद बौद्ध धर्म में पहले लड़कियों को, औरतों को, स्त्रियों को आने नहीं दिया जाता था, लेकिन तंत्र साधना में एक साधना जो साथी की जरूरत होती है जो कि एक स्त्री होती है, स्त्री को लिया गया। तो उसके बाद में जो इसमें लोगों को लगा कि अश्लीलता आ गई है, तो धीरे धीरे इसके लिए बौद्ध धर्म जो है थोड़ा सा डिक्लाइन करने लगा। और ये जो भौम वंश की जो कहानी है उसमें जो राजा की पत्नी होती है, जो रानी होती है, वो एक बौद्ध भिक्षु के प्रेम में आती हैं और उस बौद्ध भिक्षु को काया प्रवेश करने का उनको ये रहता है, क्योंकि बौद्ध धर्म में ये भी एक है कि उस तंत्र में, तंत्र साधना में पर काया प्रवेश कैसे किया जाता है ये शिक्षा दी जाती है, तो उसमें वो माहिर होते हैं। और फिर वो ये रानी की कहानी है कि वो किस तरीके से विरोध करके, और पहले तो वो बौद्ध धर्म की शिक्षा लेती है, उनको गुरु बनाती है जो अपने जो भिक्षु रहते हैं, और राज परिवार वो छोड़ देना चाहती है। वो कहती है कि मुझे सिख नहीं है, लेकिन इसमें एक कहानी भी है, जैसे हम लोग इतिहास में पढ़ते हैं ना, शाहजहां का ये है वो है, लेकिन हम उनके प्रेम कहानी बाद में पढ़ते हैं, दूसरी जगह में पढ़ते हैं, हम अपनी पाठ्य पुस्तक में नहीं पढ़ते हैं। तो ये पाठ्य पुस्तक के बाद जो कहानी है वो है। इसमें उनकी जो बहू आती है वो शिव धर्म को मानने वाली थी सब, तो वो किस तरीके से शिव धर्म को वहाँ पर एस्टेब्लिश करना चाहती है, इसकी भी एक ये कहानी है। तो अगर आप लोगों को, मैं तो ये कहूँगी, अगर आप लोगों को मिले चोरू चिबर और चर्या तो ज़रूर पढ़ें, और मुझे लगता है कि आप लोगों को ज़रूर अच्छा लगेगा।
थैंक यू सुजाता जी, बहुत महत्वपूर्ण रहा है इनका अनुवाद चारू चिवर और चार्या का। जैसे कि आपने सुना कि ये एक हिस्टोरिकल नॉवल है, पर इसमें एक लव स्टोरी भी जुड़ी हुई है, एक इम्पॉर्टेंट लव स्टोरी जो कि बताती है कि एक रानी कैसे अपना राज परिवार त्याग देना चाहती है। परकाया के बारे में बता रही थी सुजाता जी। बहुत ही सुंदर अनुवाद किया है सुजाता जी ने इस महत्वपूर्ण नॉवल का, और आप सब लोगों को जब मौका मिले तो ज़रूर पढ़िएगा सुजाता जी का अनुवाद को। और अभी हम पूछने जा रहे हैं सुजाता जी को कि
मुझे लगता है कि इस किताब को हिंदी के लोगों ने काफ़ी पसंद किया, जो मेरे परिचित रहे हैं उन्होंने पढ़ा और सबने ये कहा कि ये बहुत अद्भुत किताब है। बहुत सारे हिंदी उपन्यास भी हुए हैं जो इतिहास को लेके लिखा गया है, जैसे कि आम्रपाली को लेके लिखा गया है, और जो उनका बाणभट्ट की आत्मकथा में भी कुछ ये है, दिव्या भी जो है जो ये ऐतिहासिक, मुझे लगता है कि उस स्तर की ये किताब है। और मेरी जितने भी अनुदित किताब है उससे ज़्यादा इसको लोगों ने पढ़ा है।
तो देखिए ये अनुवाद जो है सुजाता शिवेन जी का चारू चिवर और चार्या, जिसके लिए इनको कलिंगा लिटरेरी फेस्टिवल का पुरस्कार भी मिल चुका है। इसको हिंदी ऑडियंस ने भी खूब पसंद किया है। तो मुझे आप बताएंगे सुजाता जी कि चारू चिवर और चार्या हिंदी लिटरेचर को कैसे एनरिच किया है, हिंदी लिटरेचर में कैसे रिच किया है हिंदी लिटरेचर को।
देखिए, मैंने जब अनुवाद करना शुरू किया तो मुझे लगा कि मुझे पहले एक पाठक होना होगा, और पाठक के तौर पर जो चीज़ मुझे अच्छी लगी मैंने हमेशा उसी का अनुवाद करने के लिए कोशिश किया। और मैंने ये देख चाहा कि जो उड़िया में बहुत अच्छा लिखा जा रहा है वो हिंदी भाषा में भी जाए, क्योंकि हिंदी भाषा में भी बहुत लिख रहे हैं, लेकिन सारी किताबें हम लोगों को बहुत अच्छी नहीं लगती हैं, और जो बहुत अच्छी हैं उस स्तर में भी जाना चाहिए। तो मैं बहुत भाग्यशाली हूँ कि उड़िया में लेखक जो हैं बहुत अच्छा लिख रहे हैं, और उनकी जो कहानियाँ और उनकी उपन्यास मैं यहाँ पर सिर्फ चरू चिबर की बात ही नहीं करूँगी। मैंने मनोज दास जी का उपन्यास भी अनुवाद किया था, तंद्रालोक का प्रहरी, और भी जितने सारे लेखक हैं उन लोगों की जो भी कृतियाँ मैंने कहानियाँ हिंदी के पाठक को पास पहुँचाया, मुझे लगा कि ये सब कुछ बहुत अपने आप में अनूठे थे, बहुत ग्रेट अच्छे थे। और इस तरीके से दूसरी भाषा से हिंदी में जो अच्छी कृतियाँ गई तो ये बहुत ही मतलब ये है कि हिंदी भाषा भी समृद्ध हुई।
हाँ, तो जैसे कि सुजाता जी ने अभी हमें बताया कि हमारा जो नॉवल है चारू चिवर एंड चार्या हिंदी भाषा को भी बहुत समृद्ध किया है,
क्योंकि अच्छी
और
किताब है।
हाँ, बहुत अच्छी किताब है। और इस किताब में आपको पर्सनली आपको क्या अच्छा लगा, क्या सबसे बढ़िया है चारू चिवर और चार्या में?
सबसे अच्छा तो मुझे पृथ्वी दास सर का भाषा बहुत अच्छी है, और उनकी जो बौद्ध धर्म की के बारे में उन्होंने जो रिसर्च करके लिखा है वो मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा। और बहुत सारे जगह पे जो उन्होंने पाली भाषा में जो कुछ लिखा गया था वो श्लोक भी उसमें लिखा है, जिसको कि मुझे समझने में भी समस्या आई थी, जिस मैंने उनसे पूछा तो उन्होंने मुझे बिल्कुल हर ये में मुझे उन्होंने गाइड किया। और उनकी ये भी मुझे बहुत अच्छी लगी कि मुझे उन्होंने पूरा इस काम को करते हुए, अनुवाद करते हुए जो जिस तरह का भी मुझे मदद की ज़रूरत हुई उन्होंने मेरी मदद की। और बाकी कथानक भी बहुत अच्छी है, मुझे कथानक भी इसकी बहुत अच्छी लगी।
तो आज हम बात कर रहे हैं चारू चिवर और चव्या के बारे में, जो कि एक बहुत महत्वपूर्ण नॉवेल है। और इसमें हम बात करते हैं राइज एंड डिक्लाइन ऑफ तांत्रिक बुद्धिज्म की, लव, स्पिरिचुअलिटी, पावर सैक्रिफाइस, एंशिएंट मैरिटाइम ट्रेड, आर्ट, रिचुअल्स एंड सिद्धियों की प्राप्ति, इनके बारे में बात की गई है चारू चिवर और चार्या में। और हिंदी ट्रांसलेशन में ये एक एक्सेलेंस की लेवल पे पहुंची है, और ये बहुत एक हाईली अक्लेम्ड हिस्टोरिकल नॉवेल है जिसका अनुवाद हमारी सुजाता शिवेन जी ने किया है। और आज हम आपने शब्द से शब्द ट्रांसलेट किया या अपना जो इमोशन है उसके हिसाब से ट्रांसलेट किया?
अनुवाद में कभी भी शाब्दिक अनुवाद नहीं होना चाहिए, उसका भावानुवाद होना कि लेखक क्या कहना चाहता है उसको पहले हम समझें, और उसको हम जिस भाषा में, जिस लक्ष्य भाषा में हम करने जा रहे हैं, चूंकि मैंने हिंदी में किया तो हिंदी में उसको किस तरीके से कहा जाए कि हिंदी के पाठक उसको सहजता से लें, उनको ये ना लगे कि ये किसी दूसरी भाषा से मतलब अनुवाद हुआ है, उनको ये लगे कि वो हिंदी भाषा की ही कोई कृति पढ़ रहे हैं। तो मैंने इसके लिए मैंने बहुत कोशिश किया है, हमेशा मैं अपने अनुवाद में कोशिश करती रहती हूँ। इसके लिए भी मुझे करना पड़ा क्योंकि उनकी भाषा बहुत अच्छी थी, तो मैं चाहती थी कि उनकी भाषा रहे और हिंदी में भी उस तरीके से आए।
तो सुजाता जी ने इमोशनल ट्रांसलेशन भी किया है और बहुत हाईली अक्लेम्ड है ये नॉवेल, जिसका अनुवाद सुजाता जी ने किया है। बहुत डिस्टिंग्विश्ड ट्रांसलेटर एंड ऑथर हैं और चारू चिवेर और चार्या के साथ इन्होंने हिंदी लिटरेचर को बहुत सिग्निफिकेंट कंट्रीब्यूशन किया है। और इस किताब के बारे में आप और कुछ बोलना चाहेंगी सुजाता जी?
बहुत कुछ तो इस बारे में बोल दिया, कुछ नहीं बोलना चाहूँगी, लेकिन हाँ, मेरे अनुवाद के ये में मैं ज़रूर कहूँगी कि मैंने अनुवाद का रास्ता चुन के बहुत अच्छा किया और अभी भी मैं इसके लिए बहुत गर्व महसूस करती हूँ कि मैं उड़िया साहित्य को हिंदी में ला पाई। और मैं यहाँ पर लेखिकाएं जो हैं, रंजिता प्रहार जी हैं, बनोजन नानी हैं, उनकी भी कहानियाँ मैंने अनुवाद किया है और बहुत सारी किताबें मैंने अनुवाद किया है। तो सारे लेखक से मेरा एक संबंध भी बना अनुवाद करने के चलते। और इसके लिए मैं उड़िया साहित्य को धन्यवाद देना चाहती हूँ, उड़िया साहित्य के लेखक को धन्यवाद देना चाहती हूँ कि मुझे उन्होंने अनुवाद के रूप में प्रतिष्ठित किया। थैंक यू।
तो थैंक यू सुजा। अब हमें बताइए, आपका तो ऑडियंस के साथ एक रिलेशन बिल्ड हुआ, लेकिन उड़िया भाषा और हिंदी भाषा के बीच में कुछ कोई ब्रिज बना इस नॉवेल के थ्रू?
देखिए, इस नॉवेल के थ्रू मैं नहीं कहना चाहूँगी क्योंकि एक कृति से तो कोई सेतु नहीं बनता है। और जो उड़िया साहित्य से हिंदी के सेतु में बहुत सारे अनुवादक हैं जिन्होंने अनुवाद करते आ रहे हैं, तो उन सबका इसमें एफर्ट है। एक अकेले का ये काम नहीं है। और इसमें साहित्य अकादमी है, नेशनल बुक ट्रस्ट ऑफ इंडिया है, ज्ञानपीठ है, जिन्होंने उड़िया भाषा से हिंदी में अनुवाद का कार्य करवाया हम लोगों से। और बाकी भी बहुत संस्थाएं हैं, खुद लेखक का भी अपना एफर्ट है जो अपनी अनुवाद कराना चाहते हैं, उन लोग अनुवादक से हमसे संपर्क करते हैं, उनकी कृतियों को अनुवाद करने के लिए देते हैं। तो मैं कहती हूँ कि ये पूरा एक कलेक्टिव के लिए या एक अकेले किताब का कोई योगदान नहीं है और एक अकेला चीज कोई भी सेतु नहीं बना सकता। तो
हाँ, तो सुजाता जी ने इस सेतु में एक महत्वपूर्ण
पत्थर मैं जोड़ सकती हूँ, मैंने एक पत्थर जोड़ा एक सेतु बनाने के लिए, तो वो एक किताब इसमें एक पत्थर की तरह से हो सकता है।
तो बहुत पत्थर जोड़ा है सुजाता जी ने इस उड़िया और हिंदी के बीच में इस यात्रा में। हमें ये बताइए सुजाता जी कि ट्रांसलेशन जो है, अनुवाद जो है, इससे क्या बिजनेस और एजुकेशन में कोई फर्क आता है?
नहीं, अनुवाद में बिजनेस में तो कोई फर्क नहीं आता क्योंकि हमारे देश में सब कोई जानते हैं जो लेखक है और जो अनुवादक है वो कभी भी लेखन से अपना घर नहीं चला सकता, और अनुवाद में तो और भी नहीं। तो अनुवाद जो है और लेखन जो है वो बिल्कुल स्वाध्याय सुखाय के लिए होता है कि हम अपनी खुशी के लिए, अपने संतोष के लिए करते हैं। और लेखक साहित्य सेवा करता है, अनुवादक भी साहित्य सेवा करता है और दूसरी भाषा में उसको लाने के लिए कोशिश करता है। तो बिजनेस नहीं कर सकते, उसको रोजगार के ये से आप नहीं।
तो अनुवाद बिजनेस नहीं बन सकती है, ये सिर्फ खुशी के लिए की जा सकती है। और अभी हम बात कर रहे थे सुजाता शिवेन जी के साथ, जो कि एक बहुत माननीय महिला अनुवादक हैं। और आप कोई चाहें तो कुछ सवाल पूछ सकते हैं सुजाता जी से। कोई कुछ पूछना चाहेंगे सुजाता जी से? कोई सवाल करना चाहेंगे सुजाता जी के साथ?
ये मैं प्रिविलेज लेना चाहूंगा मैम।
आप कोई ओडिया रे भी आपण पचारि पारंती?
निश्चय।
जदि पचारिबो चाहिए।
हाँ, निश्चय निश्चय।
ना हो बर्तमान ये जो स्टेटमेंट गोटे कराला जे अनुवादटा बिजनेस ही परिबोनी, मैडम कहले बोधे से बोधे कहले। तो मोर गोटे छोट अनुभूति जोटा कि धरतु 2-3 मास आगर कथा, that is based in Pune. He has ended up translating to Hindi 154 sonnets of Shakespeare. ମୁଁ ଅଶେଷ ଦେର ଆପଣ ଜାଣିନଥିଲି ଯେ ସେକ୍ସପିୟର ଏତେ ଗୁଡ଼ିଏ ସନେଟ୍ ଲେଖିଛନ୍ତି ଯାହା ହଉ 154 ସନେଟ୍ସକୁ ट्रांसलेट कर देइछन्ती हिंदी रे इंग्लिश रो एटा एटा ओडिया रो हेनी किनु देयर इज समवन एल्स इन हैदराबाद एज ऑफिसर हु हैज ट्रांसलेटेड सेम 154 sonnets to Oriya. It has happened. Now it was released somewhere in Calcutta. There was more audience than this. The vice chancellor, the education related, those people also were called. So I saw that the tie-up was being made, whether it can go to the that. Now he is supplying those packets 10, 12, 100. So it can become a business. Whether by that how people will read, what they will benefit, that's a different thing. But given the technology and way books can be produced, mo kaya katha je अनुवाद रे भी मु मोर स्मॉल अनुभूति he is doing it from Pune and he keeps me informed. So many जैसे जने अछंती कलिकता रे जने ओडिया भद्र महिला जे कि हिंदी यूनिवर्सिटी गुटे फेर अछि से हिंदी यूनिवर्सिटी वाइस चांसलर थी इमतिया है so cartoons of translated ये so जेटा होची so it's माने बिजनेस टा it basically depends on the enterprise. जेकोन जिनस धरले सी तक बुलेकी जदि करि परिबो मार्केटिंग करिके जोडी पहुंचिया कथा इट हैपेंस एटा
ना मु एठरे आपन पई कहबी इंग्लिश रो जोडा को होची मोस्टली सेति में प्रकाशक पैसा दउचंदी आउ ट्रांसलेशन पई भी बहुत पैसा दउचंदी किंतु से जदि सेई बहिटा बेस्ट सेलर बही अछि प्रकाशक भी सेति में सेति रोजगार करि परचंदी तो से माने दउचंदी किंतु आउ अन्य भारतीय भाषा रे जोटा हमें अनुवाद करछु भारतीय भाषा टू भारतीय भाषा रे जोटा हमें करछु सेतरे बहुत कम मिनिमम जोटा एनबीटी और साहित्य अकादमी जदी करला से माने एकमुस्त आपन को बही वर्ड हिसाब रे और ट्रांसलेशन पे आपन को पैसा दे देबे नो ये आपन को देबेनी रॉयल्टी नहीं किंतु इंग्लिश रे होची इंग्लिश रे जदी बेस्ट सेलर जो माने अछंती सेटा जेतळे हिंदी रे अनुवाद हो माने 4 लाख 5 लाख टंका रू भी आकु दउचंदी काहे ना से माने सेतरे कमे पड़चंदी प्रकाशक स्टा को बिकिकरी आ सेत में प्रकाशक प्रति हमर कोनोसी ये नै जे से माने काहे कि हमकु दउ ना जदी बही से माने बिकी परबेनी से माने केमति देबे काहे ना आपन देखुचंदी जो माने एठी लेखिका माने अछंती से माने निज बही छपेले भी को प्रकाशक पैसा दउचंदी दउ नांती
चेस वे मन को जणे निज ना दबा पई कैन गेट इट ट्रांसलेटेड करेक्टेड इज इट चेस वे मन को जणे निज ना दबा पई कैन गेट इट ट्रांसलेटेड करेक्टेड इज इट आई हैव ट्रांसलेटेड so anything can happen and that job will become very easy. So this is the position of translation मोर अनुभूति रु
हां नै मु आपन को एठी भी कहबी ये रे कि होउची किंतु मु गटे ये कहबी हमर जो पुराना ये अछि देखरे नलिनी 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 रे पूरित हाउ कैन इट एआई ट्रांसलेट इट हाँ करि परिबोनी आ गोटे कथा मु जने मोर लेखिका थिले से मते मेघ मयूरी से काकू देले ट्रांसलेट करिया को से सेटा को एआई रे ट्रांसलेट करके आन देले से जानि पाले जे ये एआई रे कराची काहे ना से मेघ को क्लाउड मयूर को पिकअप कर देले से कहले काहेटा पढिले जाना पड़िबो जे मेघ मयूर रो अर्थटा कोन तो सेटा अनर्थ हे गला तणु करी ए जो साहित्यिक एगुडा को करिया पे टिके एबे एआई को आउ टिके बुद्धिमान हेबा को पड़िबो इमोशनल जिंस गुडा को आज्ञा सेटा आपन को सहज जदी हेई पारिबो किंतु आपन को यस हाँ किंतु आपन को तथापि सेतिरे करिया को पड़िबो तणु करी आमे टिके एबे संतुष्ट रे अछु जे एआई एबे हमकु ये करि परियोनी रिप्लेस करि परियोनी
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद मैडम बहुत सुंदर सेशन चलथिला आ आमे बहुत दुखित कि एमती गोटे समय रे आमे सेशन को शेष करिया पे चाहू छु जस्ट बिकॉज़ कि बोथ ऑफ आवर स्पीकर हैव द नेक्स्ट सेशन सो नाउ आई वुड रिक्वेस्ट रंजिता प्रहराज मैम टू प्लीज कम एंड फेलिसिटेट आवर गेस्ट मैडम प्लीज बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद मैम, और बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, एंड थैंक यू फॉर दिस वंडरफुल सेशन, थैंक यू।
Hello. Everyone, please be seated. We'll start our next session. Hello. Everyone, please be seated now. Let's move on to the next session titled Manuscripts to Milestones, how successful books are made. This session will take us behind the publishing scene. We will see how ideas turn into manuscripts, manuscripts turn into books, and how they reach our hands and leave a lasting impact on us. Joining this session is Mr. Kanishk Gupta, a literary agent, writer, and publishing commentator. He is also a novelist with his debut book, History of Hate, longlisted for the Asian Booker Prize. He's the founder of Writer's Side, the largest literary agency and consultancy in the region, and is widely credited with professionalizing literary representation across the subcontinent. He is also known for his acclaimed Scroll.in series, Publishing and the Pandemic, which offered rare insight into the transformations of the time. Joining him is Saikat Majumdar, an Indian novelist, critic, and academic, currently a professor of English and creative writing at Ashoka University. He is the author of 5 novels, Silverfish, The Firebird, The Scent of God, The Middle Finger, and the most recent work, The Remains of the Body. His writing engages deeply with themes of religion, memory, sexuality, history, and education, and is known for its intellectual rigor and stylistic experimentation. Joining them is Mr. Jai Prakash Pandey, an accomplished journalist, editor, literary commentator. He has worked with leading newspapers including Dainik Gandhiv, Swatantra Bharat, Dainik Jagran, and Dainik Indino, and has served the Delhi Press Magazine Group as special correspondent, associate editor, and editorial editor, with over 1,000 published articles and reviews of more than 1,000 books. Currently associated with Sahitya Aaj Tak and Sahitya Tak, he presents Book Cafe, Baatein, Mulaqatein, and Shabd Rathi. Moderating this wonderful session is Chirag Thakkar, a writer and publisher. He is currently an associate publisher at Bloomsbury, India, where he works across some of the finest Indian fiction and non-fiction. Alongside his work as a publisher, Chirag is an active writer. His writing has appeared in platforms such as Scroll, Hindustan Times, Kashmir Reader, The Voice of Fashion, and The Quint. So please join me in welcoming all our speakers and our moderator. With this, I'll hand the stage over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, if there's any possibility, if you can just turn the volume up and give us a couple more mics here for all the speakers, or give us at least one that we can share. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for choosing to be here, to be part of this very exciting conversation. We are going to try and keep this into a freewheeling chat on the art of writing, the business of books, and at some point, we'll try and also invite all of you to share your comments, to ask us questions. Yeah, so shall we dig into this? Thank you, speakers, for having agreed to be part of this. I want to start with Kanishka, you. How do you define a milestone today in 2026, having freshly come off the wins of 2025 and the losses of 2025 and the years behind us? Today, what really counts as a milestone for a book's success? Is it critical reception? Is it commercial success? Is it wide readership? What really counts for a book to work today?
No, I think it really depends on the genre. I mean, for a serious career literary writer, I think critical acclaim, nominations for prizes, publication in overseas markets, and even translation languages, and sometimes even in Indian languages, will take precedence over, sales and popularity. But I think now many literary writers are also conscious of the fact that they can't just sit at home, interviews or video calls or public appearances. I think they realize that publishing after all is a business, and even though most big publishers
they subsidize literary publishing from all the big money they are making from like the foreign books they are like like distributing in India, or their commercial writers. I think it's going to be difficult for literary writers to sustain or justify getting published by publishers if their books are not selling. So I can see that change in literary writers too. Even literary writers who are not have not traditionally been open to promotions or like making public appearances. I mean, we are living in like a social media driven obsessed state. So of course, I mean, if you have a big following on Instagram, or if you have like a very popular YouTube channel, the likelihood of a commissioning editor from a major publishing house contract is very high. But there are some very good writers who are using these platforms very intelligently, with a lot of high intellectual caliber. So and then there is your like this whole explosion of translated fiction and from South Asian languages, thanks to the two Booker wins, and also like the success of books that did not win the Booker but became like big milestones, like Khachar Khochar by Vivek Shanbag and Jayant Kakeni's No Presents Please. I mean, for publishing professionals, I think going forward, it's going to be, like I said at a panel yesterday, that it's going to be very difficult for literary writers to get like traditional publishing deals across publishing houses, whether it's the multinationals or your independent publishing houses. Despite the Booker wins, despite the massive success of Heartland, the appetite for short stories is very limited. Publishers are not interested in doing original poetry. I mean, they will be happy to take on anthology. They'll be happy to take on a poetry by someone who has a massive fan base, like someone like a Ritwik Singh, who at one point was selling 1,500 copies a day. That's like the print run of like a debut literary novel. Yeah, and while I'm happy that there's a lot of support for translated fiction and some non-fiction writers, by like institutions like New India Foundation, Ashoka Center for Translation, SALT program, which has started in collaboration with University of Chicago Press. I fear for the state of the the awards. So that's completely broken. Most of the prizes have shut down. And what I would like is like literary influencers who can actually convince like readers to go and pick up a book by an unknown writer, from India. So and finally, the role of an agent, it's expanding. It's becoming more dynamic. There is a lot of expectations from me to sell internationally, to get audio deals, and to sell books in like multiple languages. So and it was never very clear when does the role of an agent end. I think for any good agent, the role of an agent, the role starts after the book is sold to a publisher. So that's my 2 cents on this.
No, that's very insightful. Thank you. Shakrit, I want to sort of bring you in here at this point and understand from you, from the writer's point of view, having written the books you have, and them having had the reception that they've had. At what point does a writer, this is now done, I am done with my share of things, and this now needs to go into hands of agents, or it needs to land in your publisher, your editor's inbox? And where does that discernment, that judgment come from? Because it's a long and torturous process of torment to stay with it. It's a very lonely act. Of course, you've got peers to give you feedback if you rely on a system like that, but then finally to sort of give it away.
That's a great question. Thank you, Chirag. See, I think writing is a very selfish act. Any form of art or ideas, there's a kind of a glorification of the self. But here's the catch. It's a self that is very expansive. It's a self which also includes the world. You never know where the self ends and the world starts. And I don't think you can really write something if you don't truly believe in it. You need to have the passion. But once, for me, I mean, all my novels are kind of, I don't know why I wrote them. There's something unpredictable. I was gripped. But once you decide to work on a book, you need to kind of think about the world. Like, what is that about the world that if you're truly passionate about something, there'll be other people who will also believe in it. I think we are moving into, I'm in agreement with a lot of things Kanishka says, but I think we are moving into a age where there's so much marketing, so much social media, that people have stopped paying attention to these things to a point, because they can pick and choose. I think in the end, people will read what they want to read. People will pick up what they want to pick up. It's not something that you can of course you need a certain amount of baseline marketing. People need to know the book is out there, but beyond that, there's so much. I mean, I was talking to another agent, Anish Chandi, yesterday, and he was talking about publishers are publishing too many books. Obviously they can't give the attention to individual books. They can't, so they're kind of hoping the book will sink, and that's exactly where the authors comes in. See, the point is, a couple of things are very important. One is what I call the zeitgeist. Does the book hit the zeitgeist, the spirit of the age? And if it's something which almost seems like luck, but it's not really luck, there's some invisible forces. Couple of examples I'll give from canonical sort of writing. James Joyce didn't sell at all at his time. I'm not saying whether it's good or bad, I'm not getting into the debate, but the puzzles he put in his book really got the academic industry going. People like, oh my God, I feel smart cracking a James Joyce novel. And that sustained him and make him an iconic figure. Someone like Virginia Woolf was also a moderate seller, and I think, we grew up reading Woolf as a great example of stream of consciousness. But somehow the feminist, sort of angle was really played up, especially in the US. And without the feminist angle, and of course it's a very important part of Woolf, but that, if you think of how feminism has moved through the middle decades of the 20th century, and Woolf became a certain sort of a really important vehicle of that. So it's what is called the spirit of the age, that somehow the spirit of the age picks up a book and then everybody starts to connect with it. I mean, even if I am to give examples from what I have written, I mean, a lot of people think my best novel is my second novel, The Firebird, which really made me known as a writer. That's what I found my voice. But in some ways, my books which deal with sexuality have found a greater readership. I think Firebird is read by a small number of people, and those who've read it, they really love the book. But the books on sexuality, for instance, A Scent of God, which is a love story of two boys in the monastic boarding school. It came out right after homosexuality was decriminalized in India in 2019 January, and something about it resonated, and it became. I mean, I'm also very fond of that book. I like that book, though I don't think it's technically as well written as The Firebird. But then this is not about what, and it's not exactly. I'm not exactly talking of the masses. As Kanishka, my agent, knows, I'm not exactly a big commercial writer. But in some ways, kind of resonance is the personal messages I get. And for me, this is what truly counts as success. It's not.
Shaukat, I have to ask you to tell me, at what point does a writer separate themselves from the work, and when do you think you're ready to sort of part with the work to submit it?
Right after it's published. I mean, it's not my work anymore. I mean, I have been told, oh, this is what this book is about, and I had no idea. Oh, this is what this book is about, and I loved it. I love to be. I mean, I think the author is dead. The author is dead the moment you publish it. Your opinion of it doesn't matter more than somebody else's. It's just my opinion. So I definitely think, I give up, and I'm very happy to let my readers tell me, oh, this is what this book is really about, and I learn from them. That's a learning experience.
That's fantastic. जयप्रकाश, आपसे पूछते हैं कि आज के दौर में एक किताब का सक्सेस का पैमाना क्या होना चाहिए? Is it critical reviews? Is it social media का शोर? कैसे जज करेंगे किताब की सक्सेस को आज?
सबसे पहले चिराग, आपका और कलिंगा लिटरेरी फेस्टिवल का आभार कि एक बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण विषय पे बात हो रही है, और हमारे जो दो कनिष्क और सैकत ने जो बात कही, दो बड़े पॉइंट इन दोनों लोगों की बात से के कनिष्क का कहना है कि किताब छपती है, उसमें एक बड़ी राशि इन्वॉल्व होती है, बहुत सारे लोग इन्वॉल्व होते हैं, बाजार जुड़ा होता है, उसकी एक पूरी प्रक्रिया है, और अगर वह लोगों तक नहीं पहुंच सकती, उसकी जानकारी हम नहीं पहुंचा सकते, तो किताब कितनी भी अच्छी हो कोई ज़रूरी नहीं। सकत का अपना मानना है कि लेखक ने किताब लिख दी, हमारा काम लगभग पूरा है, पाठक को तय करने दीजिए कि किताब क्या है, और जो मैं जिस्ट समझ पा
समझ रहा हूँ।
मेरा ये मानना है, मैं बार बार इस बात को, चूँकि भारतीय भाषाओं में जो लिखा जा रहा है उसको लगातार मैं देख रहा हूँ, और अंग्रेज़ी में जो लिखा जा रहा है उसको भी देख रहा हूँ। मैं जिस चैनल के लिए काम करता हूँ, मुझे एक अंतर बहुत तेज़ी से समझ में आता है, वो ये है कि अंग्रेज़ी का बड़े से बड़ा लेखक अपनी जब किताब लाता है तो वह उसको मार्केट करने का, उसको पब्लिसिटी करने का, उसको अपने रीडर तक पहुंचाने के जितने मीडियम हैं सब पर प्रयास करता है। और मैं साहित्य तक पे काम करता हूं, तो अंग्रेजी का कोई भी लेखक भारत में जिनका भी नाम लेंगे, जो बड़े लेखक, मतलब जिनको मिलियंस में जिनका एग्रीमेंट होता है, वो लोग भी कोशिश करते हैं। और कई बार जब हमारे स्टूडियो में आते हैं तो मैं उनसे पूछता हूं कि मैं हिंदी में चैनल चलाता हूं और आप अंग्रेजी में किताब लिखते हैं, हमारे पास आके आपको क्या मिलता है? तो उनका उत्तर होता है कि अगर इस माध्यम से लाख 2 लाख लोग भी हमारी बात सुन पाएँ, हमारी किताब के बारे में जान पाएँ, कोई पता नहीं, उनमें से 10 भी खरीदता है, हमारे लिए पर्याप्त है। लेकिन भारतीय भाषाओं के लेखकों में ये नहीं है। वो भारतीय भाषा का लेखक ये समझते
that a writer faces.
I think I agree with a lot of things Kanishka said. You know, it's really true, and it's going back to the point of, you know, I talked about selfishness. And let me add to that self-knowledge. I think an author and a book needs to know what the book really is about. You know, if you are, you know, like Kanika was talking about, if you are really going for a commercial market, but your book is not that, you know, if you have to reach the readers that your book needs. Even I teach creative writing, and I always, even when I'm looking at a draft, I'm like, what does this text want to become? Your goal is to make the text reach that space. You know, you cannot expect, you know, J.K. Rowling to become James Joyce, or James Joyce to become J.K. Rowling, Chetan Bhagat to become Shashi Deshpande. They all have their different spaces. You know, the world is large enough for many kind of readers. There is a problem of attention, that is no doubt, you know, because books are, I think in many ways we are reading much more, but we are reading widely, we are reading articles, we are reading social media posts. The whole idea of spending time on a book is, you know, one thing I feel writers, I increasingly come across writers who don't read themselves. You know, obviously I meet a lot of young writers who like, okay, will you help me write? Will you help me get published? Will you And I'm like, when I was starting out as a writer, I could never imagine approaching a writer whose work did not resonate with me. I'm not saying I have to love everything about their work, but there has to be some sense of meaning. This is how traditions grow. I think writers these days are not doing enough to nurture a literary ecosystem. You know, we are talking of books not getting noticed. For 2 years, I wrote a column for the Los Angeles Review of Books called Books from India Which Didn't Get Noticed. And one of the books, like Rohit Manchanda's book, which I wrote about, and then HarperCollins brought it out as a new edition. So I think we all need to talk about books, and as a writer, you need to know what your book truly wants to be. There are readers for that. And then, of course, you have to make sure the baseline thing, you need to get a respectable publisher. I mean, I'm not a believer in things like self-publishing, though I'm sure that has worked for certain other kinds of books, and who knows, the way traditional publishing is, we're kind of headed that way anyway. And then I think one needs to make some kind of cultural intervention. And I don't just mean by saying kind of writing sort of divisive tweets and things like that, but you know, maybe if you're a writer, write essays about literature, you know, give talks about literature. I mean, this is something I believe in. I write columns, I write essays, I give a lot of talks. I know not everybody has the same background and education, but I guess different people can do different things to sort of keep the book. It's a lot of writers like, I've written my book and that's it's over. But what are you doing about the cultural ecosystem on the whole? Because your book didn't come from nowhere. I mean, even when I see a review of my book, I'm like, I have 5 novels, 3 books of nonfiction. A reviewer is reviewing my book like I dropped from the sky. I come from somewhere, right? There's a tradition. In the same way, when I'm looking at a writer, I need to know where they're coming from, who are the other writers they're in conversation with. Arvind Krishna Mehrotra has talked about this. It's almost like we don't have a literary landscape. And this is connected with what Chirag was saying. We don't have this book talk, we don't have even Oprah Win, we don't have these influencers, but we also don't have this literary consciousness. I think it existed powerfully in the vernacular literatures, but I think even there it's getting lost now. So I think, I mean, it's almost like in one colleague of mine when I was teaching at Stanford said that, you know, oh, we are moving from the age of consumption to the age of production, and everybody knows that there are more writers than readers. I think if all the writers actually became readers and actually talked responsibly about writing, and I think I also blame academics for this. Academics are also only reading things which they can use for a grant or for a certain publication, and we have to do that. That is important. That is, but that cannot be, that cannot define everything about why you came into the profession in the first place. What about that love? So I think there's a lot we can do to make a difference, and it's sometimes it's about huge numbers, sometimes it's about the quality of responses. It depends on the kind of book you've written. For me, the greatest satisfaction is when I hear from strangers, I get a message that, oh, this book really did something to me. This book really, and I'm like, don't know this person, I'm not even connected to this person, social media, I've never, and suddenly, and that is what I think for a lot of writers, they would agree that is something that matters really.
Thank you, Shwekar. Very well put, actually. Jayaprakash, back to you. नए राइटर्स के लिए जो एस्पिरेशनल हैं, जो लिखना चाहते हैं, what tips do you have for new writers कि वो किस तरह के सक्सेस और किस तरह के माइलस्टोन को चेस करें? क्या वो एक अच्छी कहानीकार बनने पे फोकस करें? क्या वो सक्सेस को चेस करें? न्यू राइटर्स अक्सर सक्सेस की चेज में, सक्सेस की आड़ में भटक जाते हैं.
इसके उत्तर में मैं कनिष्क ने एक उदाहरण दिया था, और बहुत सामान्य सी बात है कि जिस किताब को अमिताभ बच्चन, शाहरुख खान जैसे बड़े नाम ने इंडोर्स किया था, वो किताब उस समय नहीं बिकी जब रवीश कुमार ने उसका रिव्यू किया. उसकी वजह क्या है? अमिताभ बच्चन जिस तरह से कोका कोला बेच सकते हैं या शाहरुख खान बेच सकते हैं या जिस तरह से बनियान बेच सकते हैं, उसी तरह से किताब बेच रहे थे, लेकिन रवीश ऐसा नहीं कर रहे थे. ये दो अंतर है. अगर नया लेखक कोई भी किताब लिखना चाहता है और वो चाहता है कि उसकी किताब पढ़ी जाए, तो सबसे पहले उसे जिसकी बात सहकत कर रहे थे कि हम जिस कंटेंट को लिखना चाहते हैं उस पर हम खुद कितना कॉन्फिडेंस हमें है. यानी आपको कंटेंट पे काम करना होगा. अगर आपकी किताब में, चाहे आप कहानी लिख रहे हो, कविता लिख रहे हो, कुछ भी लिख रहे हो, दम है, तो चाहे हम उसे उस समय भले ही ना पढ़ें, लेकिन कभी न कभी वो किताब अवश्य पढ़ी जाएगी. और मुझे लगता है कि अगर आपको अलाइव रहना है, हमेशा के लिए रहना है, तो आपको उसी दिशा में काम करना पड़ेगा. सेगमेंट कोई भी हो, लेकिन आपको अपने कंटेंट पे काम करना होगा, उस पर पढ़ना चाहिए. तो अपने से बड़ों को पढ़ें. लिखने से पहले, लिखने में कोई हड़बड़ी नहीं है. लिखना आप कभी किसी भी उम्र में शुरू कर सकते हैं. आप पहले तैयारी कर लें और फिर लिखें, और लिखने के साथ उसे जो मिसिंग, मैं अभी मैं रोज़ एक किताब पर बोलता हूँ, तो इसलिए मैं बार बार, मेरी जो चिंता है वो ये है कि अंग्रेजी और हिंदी में मुझे अगर तुलना करनी हो, क्या अंतर है. तो अंग्रेजी की किताबें मुझे लगता है कि बहुत प्रोफेशनली पब्लिश होती हैं, इस लिहाज से कि हर पब्लिशर के पास उस किताब का एडिटर होता है. अंग्रेजी का कोई भी लेखक, सहकत मुझे लगता नहीं है कि मेरी बात से एतराज़ करेंगे, अंग्रेजी का कोई भी लेखक अपने एडिटर को प्रॉपर इज्जत देता है और उसमें जितने चेंजेस हैं वो करने के लिए भी तैयार रहता है. और कई बार किताबों में कई बार चेंज होता है.
हिंदी जगत में ये नहीं होता है. हिंदी जगत में ये नहीं होता है.
हिंदी में एडिटिंग के नाम पर मुझे लगता है कि कोई भी हिंदी लेखक तैयार नहीं होता है. हिंदी के लेखक को ये लगता है कि मैं लेखक हूँ, मैंने लिख दिया, मेरे शब्दों को बदला नहीं जाना चाहिए. हालांकि कनिष्क मुझे लगता है तुरंत एतराज़ करने वाले, लेकिन फिर भी हिंदी में ये प्रॉब्लम है कि भारतीय भाषाओं में मुझे लगता है कि संपादक नाम की संस्था प्रकाशकों के पास नहीं है. जो कि होनी चाहिए। और और लेखक को इस बात पे तैयार रहना चाहिए कि अगर कोई संपादक सुझाव दे रहा है तो उसे चेंज करने के लिए तैयार हूँ। तो नए लेखकों को इन सारी चीज़ों से भी जूझना पड़ेगा भविष्य में, इसलिए मैंने इस बिंदु को जोड़ दिया।
So the writer is dead, according to Shortcut. I'm saying the critic is dead, and you've just said in the Hindi jagat mein the editor is also dead.
But
So
I don't agree that
now we have to kill the agent at some
we have
point.
to kill the editors in the English language publishing.
Okay, but I
We
think,
have
do
a
you think
string
the,
of
the
corpses.
editor in the
I
English
know,
world is
so
over
I'll tell you,
glamorized?
there are very good editors working in publishing houses, the English language publishing houses in India. But now, like all of us, like news, like book critics, like agents, they have to multitask. So most of their time is spent in like writing to like founders of festivals and begging for last minute invites for
Media
their authors,
reviews, influencers.
among other things. So they are not being able to edit as well as they used to, give like too much attention to like things like structural editing, development editing. And I'm talking about, I'm even talking about the stalwarts. I mean, they're not no longer able to pay too much attention to like editing of a book. And that's not because they are not good. Even the new generation, I mean, some of them are very good editors, but they're always like firefighting. They're always like getting involved in organizing meetings for authors with salespeople, with like media, with publicists, online, offline. So we are a bit all over the place, I think.
Underslept and overworked. That's where we are all at. Uh, I'd like to open this up to the audience that's been very patient and very kind in receiving all the questions and the responses that we've exchanged among ourselves. If we could have a volunteer take around a mic, if there is an extra mic, or use one of ours. Let's start with Murzban in the first row. If you could just raise your hands, we'll collect some questions. Then we will go to the person in black in row 3 there. And then we'll go to the person here in row 3 here. Murzban, also identify yourself and tell us who your question is for and keep it brief if possible.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I'm quite self-effacing that. So, hi, I'm Murzban Shroff, author of 4 books, and for me, this is very providential having my dear friend and agent Kanishka and my gentleman editor Chirag on the panel. And this is a discussion which we could wax eloquent on, guys. And since I'm not so lucky as to have the privilege of having a lunch or dinner with you,
you're part of
together,
yeah.
so I'm going to make the most of this, be a little greedy. I'm going to ask 2 questions. One is to Kanishka. Kanishka, having known you as long as I have and seen your trajectory, I think the one quality which defines you as an agent is your instinct. Now, given that instinct is an accumulation of experience, which I don't believe in, I think there's a certain metaphysical quality to the way you identified the books, and then they've gone on to phenomenal success. What you've done for Indian publishing, and taking these 3 Booker Prize out, Avni, I think, and yeah, so there are 3 in all. How do you explain that? Can you just introspect a little? I know you're very sort of humble about
the
it.
secret sauce to your instinct.
Yeah, but how have you managed to crack it?
Has
and,
a very healthy gut.
Do you get a sense when you get the manuscript? Do you get a sense now? Sorry, so that's one question. The other question is, I'm going to talk a little about regional publishing and how it's sort of trumping the bigger houses in the West. But so let's first.
I think my instincts come into play more with fiction, like both in English and translations. And of course, I mean, I have a very deep understanding of publishing, what has been published in the same genres in the past, what has worked, what has not. Because while I've been an agent for 17 years, I started like, reading about publishing and, like researching, going to bookstores when I was 22 years old. That's like, I don't know how many years ago. So instinct does come into play. And even if so I'm like the sole agent of the agency, but I have a team of 10 people, of which like 4 or 5 are senior editors. And even if like there have been many occasions where I have said no to a book like endorsed by all of them, and I've said yes to book that they didn't like, and then I mean I get involved and I read most of the times. But I think it comes into play more with fiction. In non-fiction, you cannot ignore the credentials of the writer. I mean, whether or not they've written about the subject on which they want to like subject
Domain
that they want to
expertise.
expand into a book. but yeah, there is no secret sauce, you know. I mean, it's just
So
that
do
we are,
you-
I'm very genre, I'm very open to genres. I mean, I don't believe in like taking on an author just because, you know, he's pro-establishment or he or she is well connected. So, you know, in the process of being so democratic and being open to so many voices, so many genres from so many languages. I mean, I represent books written in Maithili and Angika, you know. I mean, the author is here who translated this novel called, slim novella called Kanyadan from Maithili to English, and it won the Wow Prize. So,
Wow.
I mean, some good things are going to happen in that process. So I think it's the scale, it's the openness to, uh, and that also is, comes from the fact that I have no background in publishing. I have, you know, I didn't do my master's or even bachelor's in English literature, so I don't have those benchmarks. Oh, but like someone in the 70s wrote better than this person. So yeah, I think that's how it has worked in my case.
To your second question on Indian publishing.
So my second question is that, you know, recently I basically, just a little background, I got a mail from a top-notch agent in the US, and there was implicit panic in his message. I mean, we become friends by the time we had finished corresponding. And his whole thing is it's a bloodbath out there when it comes to literature. What used to take me a week to sell now takes me 2 years. And there's this whole shift towards romanticism. And, you know, he couldn't get the hang of what was happening. But interestingly, what is happening now, so the onus for good quality literary fiction and literary stuff has now shifted to independent houses in the US. And I'm seeing over the last 6 months, there's been this gradual shift where independent houses are getting more vibrant, they're getting more active. And that's because, as you said, there's a whole ecosystem which supports that. You know, so universities come out and, you know, authors themselves turn up for readings, and social media then becomes an advantage. So do you see Sorry. So do you see something like that happening here, where there is publishers are kind of, for example, appealing to the government for subsidies to, you know, supportive programs like the
For
Arts
literary
Council of
fiction.
England? Yeah.
Unfortunately, we are in a very strange setting, in very strange times, and with very strange people, well-meaning people, perhaps, you know, at the help of things, the powers that be. I don't know if they are truly the friends of the arts. You know, we've recently had a bunch of awards that the state gives get cancelled, that we've all read about in the news recently. Unlike in Europe, I'm thinking of the pandemic. When the pandemic hit us, we qualified toilet paper as essentials. We did not qualify. India did not qualify
Obviously,
books.
toilet paper will be an essential, no?
Yeah, but un- and it is an essential. It's not. We're not contesting whether toilet paper is essential or not. What we are contesting is whether books are also essential or not. Then the rest of the world deemed books essential, just like toilet paper, right? It is food for the soul. It's food for the mind. It's food for thinking, for our collective literary consciousness. With Shaukat was talking about. Bookstores were supported through the pandemic around the West. Booksellers were supported. Writers were supported. Small businesses were supported. We just left our own to fend for themselves, right? In the worst time the planet has seen, the worst time in recent memory that humanity has seen, we just did not care for a whole bunch of people. We did not even care for the most vulnerable, the most precarious, and left them to walk home or die on the streets. So writers come way after, you know, the working classes. So you know the priorities of. But of course, there are several who've done. I think Ashoka has been
Yeah, but
excellent. JCB had for a while, the run they had it, and so many other sort of centers with
we
offering
do need
grants, etc.
support from you know, cultural bodies in India.
Yeah.
Like I was recently in Pune attending the Pune Book Fair organized by the, you know, NBT, and I had a panel where I spoke about how Penn is in a way responsible for the two international Booker wins, because
yes.
had Daisy not got the Penn English Award,
And Deepa,
Tilted Axis would not have been in a position to pay her the translator fee, and Tomb of Stand would not have won. Same, I mean, had Deepa not won the Penn Presents, I would not know about the book or the translation. So what stops them from giving a grant to, you know, a publisher or an agent, or to tie up with the, you know, publisher in the UK and then set up the South Asia you know, imprint? In fact, I made another like proposal to a like an independent philanthropist that, you know, now he also runs a children's publishing house, that, you know, now that you know, Booker Prize for children has been announced, why don't we identify good middle grade young adult fiction from Indian languages and get sample translations done and then pitch them to the UK publishers and also incentivize them, because the children's booker will be open to both books in English and translations from English. So I think we need that support.
And the 1% that has 98% of the wealth in India, I wonder what that 1% is really doing. You know, all those lovely names that start with A in India, and you know,
we
whether
have some
really they really care
sponsors.
about literature and the arts, and they build these very fancy, garish arts center named after themselves while they're alive in cities we come from. But what are they really doing for the literary arts? And if they did also, how much would they meddle and interfere?
Like so many stalwarts, like major literary titles like Fanishwar Nath, Renu, you know, O.V. Vijayan, none of them have been published in the UK, US. In fact, Daisy Rockwell had to win the Booker Prize for Tomb of Sand for her translation of Tamas to get published in the US. Bhisham Sani has never been published in English in the UK and the US, although Tamas has been translated into some foreign
to
languages.
win the Booker Prize for her own fiction, for her return to her own original fiction.
You know, so
And
we
I'm glad
can't-
we were able to do
and
Alice's
and
Ghost.
the government and all these cultural bodies need to be patient. Things are not going to happen overnight. They've already got 2 Booker winners in 10 years of the prize history, and no other country has 2 Booker winners. And this is without the support of, you know, anyone from India.
Quickly, the person in black in row 3, if we can please give her the mic. Keep your question brief, tell us your name and who it is for, and we'll collect one more question and then wrap.
Okay, so my question is more directed again to you, Chirag sir and Kanishka sir. As people who have been working closely with the publishing process, I'm assuming you would have come across manuscripts that might, in a sense, would add more to the literary cultural scenario, but wouldn't have had the scope to become big marketed successes. So, for authors like those, like young without much of Instagram following, what would you suggest? Where should they go, logistically speaking, from that point onwards?
No, so Instagram followers is not the only metric I look at when a book lands in my inbox. The first thing I look at whether it's a good story and if it's well told and well written, right? If it's a compelling story, and if I am interested to read it beyond the first 30 pages. If I'm not, you know, interested and intrigued within the first 30 pages, I know there's something wrong with, on a good day, on a bad day, on any day, right? There's something wrong with the work, it's not ready, or I am not the right editor and reader for it. Maybe it'll excite someone else, right? Because it's a very taste-driven business and industry. There are so many writers who have no social media following that I have given book deals to, but then I have badgered them after I've given them book deals to make sure that they start building some sort of digital footprint and start to learn. We also have to coach them on how to face the public, right? We basically have to have their dress rehearsals time after time on how to deal with settings like these, how to speak to audiences and get out of that ivory tower and learn to speak to the reader directly. Murzban here, who's sitting in the front row, can attest to how much we have badgered him on getting on social media, making reels, being connected to the reader directly, because we're in the age where, you know, the middlemen, the middlewomen have disappeared. You want to directly be able to reach and tweet at your authors and like them and slide into their DMs and things like that. So don't think of all of that. I think you should focus on the craft and then the rest will follow. One quick question in row 3 and then we wrap. I'm sorry we've taken the time we have.
Good afternoon, sir. Question is to Saikat, sir. Sir, do you trust your first draft instincts, or do you believe that meaning arrives much later in the process of writing?
I also add a question to that. How much do you allow your editor to meddle with your work?
Oh, I'm an obsessive reviser. So if it takes me to finish a novel in 6 months, I might spend the next 3 years revising it. So it's 5 times the time. I truly believe in that thing writers put on their fridge: write drunk, edit sober. So I'd write fairly quickly, but then I spend a lot, and I also have a trusted small group of people, and I suggest all writers have developed this, and they're all writers, and even before it goes to my agent Kanishka, I always share it with them, and they also often share. We have a network of writers who read each other's drafts, and I take feedback very seriously, very seriously. Even when I disagree with the feedback, I think why is the person saying this? If they are serious, if they're honest, there must be a reason. And I think about it, and sometimes I may not take that advice, but it does something to me. I mean, I did an MFA in creative writing, and this was in Ohio in the early 20th century, early 21st century, no, 21st century, long time back. And honestly, I hated the workshop experiences, because people were not really didn't understand what one of my professors was Antonio Dior, who wrote the book All the Light You Cannot See, and he was my professors were very nice, but I hated the experience because they didn't understand what I was writing about. But even those 2 years did something to me, that getting the work read every day by a group of people, and ideally by a group of slightly hostile people who are not really open to Indian writing or even my very European literary influences. It was very Raymond Carver driven minimalist writing. That did something, and that changed my way of writing, even though I was rejecting the feedback on a daily basis. So I'm very receptive to feedback. I really like to read drafts. As I teach creative writing, I like to read drafts and give feedback, as well as I like my drafts to be read. And I think any editor who's worked with me, I've worked with a lot of publishers. I worked with Bloomsbury for my non-fiction, not for my fiction yet, so I hadn't a chance to work with Chirag. But I have really gained a lot from feedback, and I take it, and I suggest people take it very seriously. But you have to be the final judge.
All right, thank you. That's all the time we have. For all the questions that remain unanswered and views you couldn't share with us, please come find us, hound us, stop us, share your views. We're happy to sort of mingle and take this offline. Thank you, Team Kalinga. Thank you for being extremely patient for this lovely session. The audience, uh, for being as incredible as ever, and to our incredible panel. Thank you.
Thank you all for such an enthralling session. I'm sure your wise word would serve as an inspiration for writing and reading to our audiences. Now I'd like to request Mr. Musban F. Shroff, sir, to get on stage and provide the citations to Sir Chirag, sir, and Shaikat, sir. request everyone to be seated for the next session. Everyone, please be seated. So let's move on to the next exciting session titled Welcome to the School of Life. This session invites us to reflect on learning beyond classrooms, learning that emerges from lived experiences, public service, ethical choices, and quiet introspection. It is a privilege of mine to introduce Ms. K. Vasuki, a senior Indian Administrative Service officer and writer with extensive experience in public administration. She has worked closely on social issues, justice, welfare, and institutional reform. Her work in governance is deeply informed by an ethical commitment to public service and empathetic leadership. As a writer, K. Vasuki brings administrative realities to the foreground, reflecting, offering, sharing insights into power, policy, and their human consequences. Her work underscores the importance of ethical governance and the lived impact of what it means to, excuse me, what it means to, hello, 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 what it means to have impact of decision making. Moderating this session is Ms. Pallavi Reba Pragada, who is a journalist and public policy consultant based in Delhi. She started her career at India Today as a feature writer and journeyed through Europe, the Middle East, promoting her literary presence. With this, I'd like to hand over the stage to both our speakers, please.
Very good afternoon to all of you. Welcome to Bhubaneswar. Welcome to this wonderful city of literature and culture. When I was reading, the synopsis of your book and about your journey in the administrative services, I was reminded of one line from one song that went, "Give me some sunshine, give me some rain, give me another chance. I want to grow up once again." That movie was a lot about, was primarily about parents pushing their children into fields like medicine or bureaucracy or engineering or, structured systems that are identifiable as systems that can, give you upward mobility and, financial mobility, financial growth to a generation. And that essentially means killing any other profession, ambition, any other aspiration that any child could have. Now, you had a textbook career too. You've been a doctor, now an administrator. Now, a book like this coming from you is essentially, I feel, a kind of a twist on that sentiment. So I'd like to understand what triggered you to write about the school of life and having led a textbook life and having checked all those boxes.
Thank you. Actually, as you rightly pointed out, the Three Idiots song, "Give Me Some Sunshine," actually, I did mention that in the second chapter of my book. That's the sentiment I think most of us grow up in a competitive world, right? So, and I also grew up in such a world, okay, very much exposed to this kind of a motivation to run behind success as defined by the society. And mind you, this success will be considered success only if you have the famous trinity, either power or money or fame. And if it doesn't fulfill the criteria, any of these, then it's not considered success, right? And I did, growing up in a society like that, we are conditioned to believe that this is the kind of success that we are supposed to run after, right? So I believed it too when I was young. And for me, I chose to become a doctor and then an IAS officer, primarily because I wanted to serve the society. I wanted to make this world a better place. But there is also this other part of my ego that craved for that success, right? Because the society taught me to crave for that kind of a success. So, yes, I had a very pure intention of making the world a better place, but it's the ego part of me also, was more attracted to the glamour of being a civil servant or being a doctor so that, the society respects us. So I was very competitive when I was young.
Well,
And
clearly.
yes, yes.
You crack some of the hardest exams in the country, so that goes without
Obviously,
saying. Yeah.
that goes without saying, right? Exactly. So, supposedly the toughest exam in the world. So, obviously, you have to be competitive you have to have that spirit, competitive spirit to crack such exams. So, I was very competitive. I was this typical type A personality that psychology defines. And what happened is that a couple of things, okay. One is that when I took charge as the state nodal agency for waste management, that's the first time I'm trying to understand the environmental issues and sustainability issues, right? So that is when it was the year 2014. I had just given birth to my two children. My daughter was 3 years old and my son is 1 year old. And I was feeding my son. And that's when I came across this report which literally sent shockwaves through my spine. And it said that organ damaging, carcinogenic, highly toxic chemicals are found in the umbilical cord blood of newborns. So if you take any average newborn born in this modern world and you test its umbilical cord blood, there are a group of chemicals called forever chemicals, about 12,000 chemicals found in the umbilical cord blood. So from that point on, that study, especially as a feeding mother, and it said that, these toxins go through mother's milk to the children too. So as a feeding mother, I was like, what are we doing? Where are we going? I didn't understand. I never, and for me, the most shocking revelation is that I've had one of the highest levels of education and the best of trainings any average human being can get in this country. And I didn't know this till some environmentalist asked me to study certain material. Why didn't I know about this? And that threw a lot of questions. And questions have been there for quite some time, ever since I came into service. But then eventually there came the next turning point where, I had been an asthmatic ever since I was young. And being a competitive person, I can never let my disease or my condition to affect my performance, right? So as a doctor, had a tendency to abuse any kind of medicine to keep me performing. So eventually, by the time I hit 35, 36, my system, just kind of on a shutting down mode,
Especially the gut, because if you're taking too much medication or
Yes, yeah. So I was taking a lot of medications for my asthma and so many other things, okay. So then I understood that, I had always been on this running mode, everything I wanted fast, I wanted instant. My life was always in a fast forward button, So I realized that, this is not the way. I mean, on the personal front, I'm damaging my health.
Of course.
And on the environmental front, we are damaging the planet. So something said that, I need to pause and reflect what's happening with me and this world for that matter. So I understood that, there's a huge connection between all our lives on this planet eventually.
Absolutely. And you've brought in a concept of mindfulness, which is
Yes.
something which is absolutely missing from our curriculums. I mean, our
Absolutely.
curriculums are designed in ways that, like, for instance, your curriculum is not going to teach you how to handle grief. Your curriculum is not going to teach you how to handle heartbreak. And this is a question that I had asked Sadhguru also once, like long ago. And I said, who's going to train us to deal with
Mm.
heartbreaks? I mean, I was in my 20s then. I said, who's going to train us? His response was, have you had a heartbreak recently? I said, no, but like that's something that we don't get educated in. Like,
Absolutely.
how do you navigate very complicated interpersonal relationships? How do you, navigate, you're in government, every day in government is drastically different from the previous day. You can encounter all kinds of realities, and you have to have a very systemic sort of an approach to these, to solving all these problems. But at the same time, you need to be mindful. Now that's something that we have to either just like they say, pick on the job, learn on the job. So that's one aspect
You are bang on.
which
So
needs to be,
when you are talking about these soft skills or life skills, so to speak,
yeah,
these are related with a concept called emotional intelligence, which you must have heard of.
yeah,
And the emotional intelligence, especially, is measured by 5 different components. But I'll talk about one of them, which is called self-awareness.
yeah,
Now, recent studies have been establishing the fact that emotional intelligence is more important than intellectual intelligence. EQ is more important than IQ. And if you see, for a holistic education, you need 3 domains to be addressed. One is the cognitive, the second is the affective, and the third is the psychomotor. Now, cognitive, we are aware, because 98% of the time, our education system is focusing only on the cognitive. And it's not just Indian education system. World over, it's a case. Maybe the rest of the developed countries are picking up a little faster than our country. But overall, if you see, entire world is focused only on IQ. But it has been established scientifically that EQ is more important than IQ. Whereas, unfortunately, our education system does not focus on the affective domain, which is related to the EQ.
So I have a question here. I'm sorry to cut you short because I want you to now answer this along with what you're saying. Is that there is now a need for EQ in jobs,
Yes.
like in a
Yes.
lot of new jobs that are coming up. There's a need for EQ, which is now being very structurally addressed and at least talked about. Now, when, like you said, there's a competitive streak in students who are, let's say, type A or like, people who are more competitive in that sense, more ambitious in that sense. Now, if they realize there is a need for EQ, which is now something we can't ignore, like say in the 90s or in like the early 2000s, EQ wasn't even a thing. I mean, I think the first time that I heard about EQ was after I started working. Like this is a
Yes.
concept, and now people are talking about it. So all of that. So I feel like when this becomes a need in the market, what does it do to then the systems, the education systems, and parenting as well?
So when the society's EQ increases, unfortunately, EQ has been on a decline, and the decline is precipitous. For example, the state of the heart is one of the largest global study on emotional intelligence, and it has recorded this global decline in emotional intelligence primarily ever because of electronic and digital exposure. So ever since the advent of the television, both IQ and EQ has been on the decline, but EQ more so, dropping precipitously. So, but we need to understand where from, in order to answer your question, we need to dive deeper into how this concept originated in the first place. If you see the entire concept of emotional intelligence and EQ, I think I am allowed to say that it originated from India. I mean, though it came from the Western psychological sciences, but the ultimate origin is from India. Now, who promoted emotional intelligence? The 1995 book on emotional intelligence was written by Daniel Goleman. Daniel Goleman came in the 1970s to India. He learned meditation and he understood that this is the most important intelligence that the world needs to learn. Because he underwent these meditation retreats multiple times and he understood that this is what he has been searching for. He went back, and back in Harvard at that time, I don't think there were many takers to believe that something from India has so much value. So he, along with other like-minded scientists, they did volumes of research on the effects of meditation on emotional, physical, and mental well-being on human beings. And I would say that 1970s he came to India, he learned meditation, he started practicing meditation. It was a little on and off, but he was a regular practitioner. 1995, he's writing the book on emotional intelligence. So I feel, I mean, one, how to improve the EQ? Very simple. Let's start meditating. And there are some really great meditation techniques like Vipassana. and many Kriya yogas. I mean, whichever suits any person. But I strongly suggest Vipassana is a great technique. It really cleanses our mind of all its impurities. So when we do this, scientifically it is proven that the one great way of improving EQ and emotional intelligence is, of course, to meditate. And it's scientifically proven. So when, or in meditators, they kind of tested the various areas of the brain which are, the manufacturing unit of emotions, or, where there is stress reduction, there is empathy, so compassion, kindness, all of these things increase in a human being when they start meditating. This is scientifically established right now. Okay, so I feel the reason I wrote my book is to essentially convey this message that globally, our systems should change in such a way that prioritize this kind of a learning.
Yeah.
This is the most important learning a human being should and would be able to ever get in their life, to understand oneself, that is self-awareness, to understand their beliefs, their emotions, their actions, how their actions hurt another person or affect another person, how their actions and decisions affect this world, affect humanity, affect this planet. That is self-awareness. That is the most important type of intelligence a human being should have. And you need not be born with, self-awareness, because generally IQ is said it's innate, but EQ can be developed. So this is something, I wrote this big book because, I felt this kind of a learning should be given its top priority. It should come at the forefront. Only then the rest of the knowledge should come. So that is the idea I wanted to give through this book.
Absolutely. I have a question here. This is a country that's based, that a lot of our views are premised on karma yoga, on what the Bhagavad Gita says. And the Bhagavad Gita essentially is telling you to go do your job as well as control your mind, as well as sort of orchestrate your journey, and that your mind has to be the one that you need to control. And you may have a lot of emotions which may interfere with the way you think and the way you work and all of that. Now, that is a philosophy which is very easy to imbibe. That, okay, I'm going to do my thing and I'm going to navigate and maneuver through the problems that I have, and my mind has to be strong. And, Chanakya talks about it, and so many people philosophers in India who've talked about how you need to control the mind and tame the mind and all of that. Now, when it comes to something like a Vipassana or something like a, meditative, retreat, receding into meditation and then coming back, of course, there are tremendous benefits to that. But a young generation that is very active, that is very energetic, that is very like on the ball, and a generation that is, scrolling and on Instagram and on this kind of a generation that's used to living at a certain pace. Now, when you tell them about meditation, of course, at a certain age, you understand that, okay, this is very, very needed and we need it, and we feel like, okay, we need to go into whatever works for you, music works for you, any state which sort of helps you withdraw and reflect, and that energizes your mind and all of that. But a certain generation, and I'm talking about generations much after ours, that are leading even more tense lives and even more like lives which are just constantly on this, your feed is, you're scrolling through your feed through the day, there's multitude of information that you're getting daily. How do you sell meditation? And I'm using the word sell here because I feel for their own benefit they need it. How do you sell meditation to a generation like that? Like, we don't want to create skeptics, but we want them to benefit from, this. So how do we build a middle path that probably borrows from here and, packages this idea to them in a way that they accept it?
So that's a very crucial question. So I have, during my entire career, worked with the younger generation, and currently I'm Secretary School Education in Kerala, and constantly interacting with children and college-going students is my passion. And let me tell you that, the younger generation is, I mean, in a way that, it's not their fault. Is it their fault that they are scrolling and getting addicted to
Not
digital?
at all. That's the society they're born into.
Exactly. It is
Yeah.
our fault. It is the
Absolutely.
people
I think
belonging.
more than a fault, it's just a reality now. It's just become a
It's the
reality,
reality.
where it's so difficult to pull a child entirely away. I mean, you may want to curb screen time and put all of those practices in place, but pulling a child entirely out of social media is also impossible because they're living with it.
So we don't have a TV at home.
Wonderful.
So we don't have a TV at home. We've not been having TV for the past 8 years. We didn't want to get into this electronic digital madness as a family. And we had been sensitizing our children right from when they are in their KGs and their first standards that, I mean, digital exposure is not good for you. And I remember very well, like 5 years
Are they
back.
taking it well though?
They are taking it amazingly well.
Oh, that's nice.
That's because, you need to deliver things to the younger minds in a way that their questions are answered. We elders have a tendency to say, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. We don't explain, sit and explain and with love and, answer their questions, their apprehensions, like, why these things are bad and why these things are, good, whatever. So the point is, what I feel is that it is our generation and the previous generation, the generations which had, I feel, very minimal self-awareness, so to speak, coming out of an education system that is highly IQ bound. And you said, you mentioned a sentence saying that, control our emotions or ignore our emotions, let not emotions interfere our decision making. Actually, it's the other way around.
Yeah.
In an IQ dominated world, we are trained to believe that emotions are vestiges of human evolution. But no, emotions are like your, are your magnets that positions the emotional positioning system in the ocean of life, right? I mean, they are the magnets of our moral compass. Emotions are the basic, crucial factors that determines whether you are an empathetic decision maker or you're just an intellectual idiot, so to speak. Okay. So
that's absolutely true, because we're trained to think like, oh, if your mind is wandering, you bring
Yes.
your mind back. And if you are wandering as a person too much, then you need to focus at the job, at hand.
Mind is
Which is, I feel, a very strange way of looking at life, because how do you will have thoughts. You will meet people, you will have thoughts. You will go through experiences, you will have thoughts. So what do you do with those thoughts? I mean, as writers, it's easy because you write them out, or as journalists, it's easy because there's expression. You're doing communications. It's more like you have a canvas where constantly. But for all the people who don't, then it becomes
So
tricky.
if you see the human mind, right?
Yeah.
The human mind is a very complex entity. So if you just have to talk about the nature of the human mind, we can take days together, okay? So I'm not going to go into that. All I would like to say is that human mind is a very complex entity. And we are ready as human beings to understand the deepest parts of the space or the deepest parts of the ocean. We will send satellites and submarines to understand the depths of the ocean and the space, but we are too scared to analyze the depths of our own mind. That is a fact. We never want to turn inside and see the dirt that we are carrying inside. Okay? So no matter how much you say, okay, control your thoughts, control your emotions, don't be stressed, don't focus on your work, it's not going to work. Mind is a very funny and very ill-trained monkey. Okay?
That's a wonderful way to put it. Can we please have a round of applause for that? It's an ill-trained monkey. That's such an enduring way of like explaining such a deep problem. As well.
So the very I feel the crucial. I mean, why I wrote this book is because you see any problem in this world. Okay, whether it is digital addiction or wars or climate change, you take the war. I mean, I don't know, the wars between husband and wife or the wars between nations, climate change, anything. You take any problem in the world. Why are they not getting solved? It's because the human ego, right? The human mind, right? What is the technology to purify the human mind? So that technology has been given to us 2,000, 3,000 years back. And that technology is still the most powerful technology. So as an officer, I felt duty bound because I'll give you just one example. I used to be this highly ill-tempered, short-tempered person, okay? I was a highly reactive person. And, that created its own share of issues in our marriage, We had a love marriage. I married my college sweetheart. There is enough love in our life. It's not that I had a bad marriage. But my temper and, the typical man-woman issues, is there in every marriage. Was there in our marriage too, but my temper complicated it like really bad. And every time things went wrong, I was totally out of control. I was totally out of control. And it so happened that after my children were born, these fights were continuing. And it so happened that I once banged the glass of a door and it broke. Okay. And my daughter, my 3.5-year-old daughter, was looking at this, looking at her mother turning into a monster. So I was feeling helpless as a mother. I did tell myself every January 1st, me and my husband will take a resolution, okay, this year we'll not fight and I will not scream. But as I said, mind is an ill-trained monkey. It will not listen to what you have to say. So the 2nd January itself, we'll have the worst of fights, okay? So I couldn't train my mind. No matter how much I wanted to control it, I couldn't because I'm not having any mastery over my mind. But when I started doing some of these Kriya Yoga and everything, the mind
So it is
control-
coming out of personal experience.
It is complete. I mean, this is a book that is not exactly an advisory book. It's sharing my experience of transformation. I was this really bad, ill-tempered person, a mother who felt a failure, like a failure because, I couldn't set an example in front of my children. Today, after 8 to 10 years, I feel proud as a mother. I know I'm one of the best mothers my children can have because that is the kind of transformation that meditation brought in my life. And that made my marriage happy. I become a more loving person. I'm a calmer person. And my mind, it has changed so much. To have the memory of my erstwhile mind, which was a monkey, to what it is today, to observe these two mental states is really a transcending experience that words can never ever capture. You'll have to experience it yourself. It is my experience, so it has become my truth. But it'll never become your truth unless it becomes your experience. That is why these sciences are called experiential sciences, because this is not something that can be exactly evidenced. Although, as I said, there is a lot of scientific evidence on how the brain structure and function changes when a person starts meditating, right? But it's beyond scientific evidence. The experience of a meditator, only the meditator will know.
Absolutely. And there are two sides to your life where, you on the one side, you're seeing a system, you're seeing data and numbers. And the way the government is always planning for scale. The government is always, very vast in its numbers and its approach because they have to handle those numbers. On the other side, we're talking about something which we can put under a microscopic lens and be like, this is empathy, this is the way we control our mind meditative. How do you think empathy and mindfulness can be, channeled through government systems in a way that we create better citizens who have better civic sense, better sense of community, just better people, in terms of understanding each other in neighborhood living requires empathy. Communities require empathy. Any state that is building will require empathy towards the other. And without empathy, policy is not possible. Or
Right.
good policy is not possible. So what is your, take on that?
So, a couple of things. I strongly believe that this has to start from the school level itself. I mean, the simple mindfulness techniques, just focusing on your breathing and, trying to just stay with your breathing. That is one of the basic, simple, but yet very powerful mindfulness exercise. This is something that is safe, it is universal, anybody and everybody can do it. I mean, so I feel any child above 8 years old can do this. So as Secretary General Education, I'm trying to bring these exercises into the curriculum. But of course, it takes time in a system that is already set. So, but yes, we are introducing these mindfulness-based exercises to the school children. And the second thing I would like to say is that, the entire development process, right? You were saying, as you rightly mentioned, we are just focused on numbers and facts and everything.
And rote learning and things that are more like easily done.
Exactly, easily done, exactly. So if you see the entire world, you can divide it into two components. One is the mentality and the other is the physicality, right? So I am seeing you as a person sitting in front of me, okay? You're made up of matter. I'm able to see you visually. So you're a physical entity, but that is just physical information, that is physicality. What you are as a person, what you're thinking right now, what you're feeling right now is a mentality. It is very subjective. The physicality is very objective, right? But the mentality is very subjective. And it's easier to focus on the gross and the physical aspects of life. So we believe that, if we focus on the material, physical aspects, the mentality will be taken care of automatically. That is the entire premise of the
Yeah, we're conditioned to believe that. And
exactly
that's how
the
we're
global
conditioned to
human
exist
civilization
in society.
and the human progress has been always focusing on the physicality, hoping that the mentality will be taken care. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. No wonder.
Somewhere I feel we've done a big disservice to mentality and what's inside the mind through a
Absolutely.
lot of sectors like cinema, fashion, like, the whole objectification of not just women, even men. Like, it's a very a good point that you've made, that how are we actually in this trap? We've actually looked at it, backwards and seen like this is where the problem
Your
is
exact word.
originated from. Like, this is exactly what the more we objectify, the more we make a certain kind of a visual that's commercial, the more we are losing out on what's inside the mind. And any conversation around therapy, so this, previous session that we had on chat GPT, somebody said, chat GPT is now a therapist to a lot of young people who are afraid of, sharing their dark thoughts or sharing certain thoughts, where parents will be like, why are you having these thoughts? So, because there's so much stigma and taboo. And
Absolutely.
also therapy is not very accessible, it's not affordable to a lot of people. Like, a therapist, an average therapist will cost you a certain amount, and a lot of people, I know, startups in the impact sector and all, are working on making therapy accessible to a large number of people. But that's a challenge, because these are conversations that, unless these conversations become more mainstream, it's very difficult to
Absolutely. So I'll answer
figure out a
your
solution.
question or your observation in 3 points. Number one, you're absolutely right. Nobody wants to talk about the mentality, specifically the vulnerable sides. We don't talk about our vulnerable sides. So in this book, this is exactly what I've dealt with. I have dealt with some of my deepest, darkest, vulnerable sides in the book, some of which I've already mentioned. For this exact reason, these are the things that we have, as a civilization, have been ignoring for so many eons, right? And see what we have come, as per the World Happiness Report, the global happiness has been declining for quite a while right now. Especially the younger generation. They are the most unhappy because of this exact digital addiction. They are the most unhappy generation ever in this world, as per data. There is data to prove that, okay? So this is the problem, and the second part of the question, everything has been commercial. Where did it all start? Absolutely right. We need to ask this. I was asking this myself. How did we create such a scheme of things? I wanted answers myself. So I was researching, I was contemplating, I was introspecting. I then understand it all started with the great industrial revolution, right? So now we are sitting on a chair, right? Imagine we were having this conversation before the industrial revolution. Do you think we would be sitting on a chair? Who told you that, you have to sit on a chair to have this conversation? The person who's selling the chair. And in the previous session, somebody was mentioning that, toilet papers are essential, right? Did we use toilet paper 20, 30 years back? No, right? Did we? We Indians?
In India, actually, toilet paper is a very Western concept. So
Yeah.
it had to come to India through the West.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did we use 20, 30 years back? Oh my
Not at all.
No, right? Oh my God, how did we live then? So who said it's essential?
Yeah.
Right? So
Exactly.
the person who's selling the toilet paper. So the point is, from the industrial revolution, right? There were so many products that were being made, and somehow they had to be sold, and there was marketing, advertisement,
Absolutely.
telling you that you need this.
Yeah.
So actually, in a way, needs are created by the marketing world. Your needs are actually very minimal. A human being's need is very minimal, but there is a very cleverly manufactured confusion between what is a need and what is a want by the marketing world, right? And I'm not going to say that, this marketing world is like evil, conniving masters, who are trying to ravage the planet. No, it's people like you and me who believe that, as I said, the difficulty between understanding between the mentality and the physicality, right? Everybody believes that if we focus on the physical, material aspects of life, our life will become better. So it's people like you and me who keep promoting this idea that, we need to promote materialism. And for that, commercialization comes in as a great aid. And we all promote it. So it's a self-feeding cycle, right? So the point is, it's a very self-destructive path because none of this material things is going to take care of your mentality. And let me remind you why there are toxins in the umbilical cord blood. Because we are so focused on producing more and more products. Obviously, if you want to make a product cheap, you need to put in all kind of cheap, dangerous chemicals into the product to make
Even
it
in,
cheap
even
for you
in
to buy.
diapers for that matter.
Everything. I'm not going to take one particular product and say everything. This mic will have, the sari will have, the shoe will have, the phone will have. Everything will have chemicals. And nowhere in the world we have foolproof disposal mechanism. So obviously they enter our oceans, our rivers, our soil, our plants, our food chain. And by process called bioaccumulation and biomagnification, it reaches with maximum toxicity in the human body because we are at the top of the food chain, right? So it reaches
That causes a lot of emotional distress also because if you're
it
made up
causes
of
a lot of
chemicals.
cancer, right?
Yeah.
We are hearing heart attacks at 20 years of age for a woman. A woman is dying at 26 years of age of heart attack. Do you think it is just stress? No. It's the chemical toxicity, stress duo, right?
Yeah.
They have they are perfect partners in crime to kill a person, right?
Yeah.
So the stress and the chemical toxicity, it's killing the entire planet.
Yeah.
We are clearly in a self-destructive path because of the ignorance that, because of the very basic ignorance that, let's keep focusing on the physicality, the mentality will be taken care. The entire purpose of the book is that, no, it doesn't work that way. Let us start focusing on the mentality. The physicality will be taken care on its own. But if we do not focus on the mentality, if we do not focus on increasing the most important and most superior form of human intelligence, namely self-awareness, I don't think we are going to survive as a species. As Stephen Hawking says, I think we will face extinction. So I feel it is a dire need of the world that we start changing systems in such a way that we prioritize on the kind of learning that will increase the self-awareness of a human being. So that is the basic essence of my book.
And perhaps make this narrative more mainstream.
Absolutely.
Perhaps, give this narrative a sense of urgency.
Absolutely.
Because every time somebody talks about mindfulness, oh, they're talking about mental health, oh, they're talking about something like that doesn't concern us. There's a very easy othering of these topics which happens so often at any platform, wherever you're talking about, whether it's therapy, whether it's mental health or mindfulness or anything to do with the mentality.
And the moment you talk about it, you are considered a nutcase, right?
Either that or like you're not you're considered someone who's taking frivolous issues too seriously, which is a
Absolutely.
problem.
Which is a problem.
Which is a problem because we can't be fighting in rooms where people don't want to give any value to what we are saying around all this.
Yes.
And it's a challenge that we are facing everywhere. I mean, look at primetime news or look at politics or look at the way people handle each other in conversations. We are no longer able to sit across from a table and have a conversation. Either, whether it's on
always
politics or on
fighting, right?
business or on, any field, like it's very difficult to converse on even policy matters for that matter. So it's going to really make the world easier, better place, make like decision making easier, not just in politics but in business and so many other fields. So maybe there is an
Decision-making,
economic
more-
viability to focusing on mentality. Maybe I guess if that is outlined as a silver lining, then it'll pick up as an issue because economic viability becomes the cornerstone of anything that we're picking up.
So you were talking about economic viability and all. So we always talk about, economic recession, we focus on the economic charts, The state of the heart says that we are in a global emotional recession.
Yeah.
How many of us are even aware that such a report is talking about it, right? So as you rightly said, yes, we need to talk about mentalities. We need to talk about vulnerabilities. And therapies, let me say that, meditation is the best therapy. You don't need, the therapist is inside you. You just have to tune to that therapist inside you, right? And meditation helps you just do that. Okay, so
Absolutely, and I think with a lot of people going to I know Arvind Kejriwal does Vipassana, and it became very popular in Delhi with a lot of IITians. It became very popular with a lot of people in Delhi that this is Vipassana, and like it happens. And a lot of people were even in government started going for Vipassana. But I feel like there's no one size fits all approach to this. Whatever works for you, as long as you're focusing on mentality, I think that's
so all
much
I
needed.
say is that, how will you ever know whether it works for you or not if you have never tried
Correct,
it?
correct,
Right?
absolutely.
So my only appeal is that fine, you don't have to continue, but then, just expose yourself, right? So just expose yourself, try it out, not if at all anything is going to happen, it's only going to make you better. Are you scared to become better? Yeah, many people are, they would rather love to be there
Be where
miserable,
they are, because
wherever
that's the
they are,
comfort zone.
they are, even though the comfort zone is absolute misery. The human mind isn't, it's
adjusted
made
to those situations.
exactly. The human mind is such a way, it's made in such a way that it would rather remain in the miserable comfort zone rather than moving out of the comfort zone, even though it could be more beautiful, because we are very territorial. We inherit this territorial instinct from the animals, right? So our mind is highly territorial.
In my mind, it just moved from a crazy monkey to a little cow, just sitting on the road and like refusing to move.
Yeah.
It's just like, is the mind a monkey or a cow?
Exactly. So, I mean, it's very difficult to convince your mind that, it's okay to leave your miserable comfort zone to move into a much more better place. I always say, we feel that, a known devil is better than an unknown stranger. Only in this case, we are the known devil, and we don't want to meet the wonderful stranger that we can become.
Absolutely.
So that exact psychology works for our human mind.
And the sooner you know about this, the better it is in life.
Absolutely. The sooner you realize this, the sooner you try this and be consistent, because this is not going to be like, an online shopping, you click and then it gets delivered. No, it's not going to work that way. It takes time. It takes time. As I said, the monkey is a bit slow to train. So, but you give it that kind of a time, you give it that kind of an effort and see for yourself how life unfolds for you. Then maybe you'll get convinced. Then it'll become your experience.
And there are a lot of a lot of Gen Z crowd here that's volunteering for KLF to make it happen, and I hope they're listening to the sessions along with organizing and all the pressure that they're facing, because ultimately this is the takeaway from a platform like this. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for
I'm so glad that we had this conversation, and there's so much that came out of it. There's absolutely some brilliant takeaways.
Thank you.
So thank you so much. Thank you so much, KLF, for providing this platform.